Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Live Show Week 7 Recap Edition. I'm your host, Ian Hartitz. It is a great night to be great, and it's a great night to break down again all of the action from a very eventful Week 7. So injuries, utilization, top performers, what to expect moving forward, all that and so much more. Of course, as always, I'm joined by the one, the only Dwain, the Rock McFarland, rocking an Indianapolis Colts hat. Dwain, how are we feeling, Mr. Daniel Jones?
Man, front runner, getting on the bandwagon. I wore it up to the grocery store after the late games were over. Had to go get me some ice cream. Ian, need some cookies and cream in the house. So when the show's over, I will be hitting the cookies and cream. I know, guys, not healthy to eat that kind of stuff right before you go to bed. But I was in line behind an Eagles fan. He had on a Saquon Barkley jersey. I was like, oh man, an Eagles fan in Texas. And he turns around and he says, well, you're a Colts fan. I go, no, I'm a Cowboys fan. He goes, oh, a closet Cowboys fan, even worse. I was like, all right, good point.
As someone who also got, a lovely deal from our friends over at New Era and got all the hats, and I enjoy wearing the different ones around. Like, you just open up such a can of worms, Dwayne. Anytime you tell someone you're not a fan of the team of the hat you're wearing, you just see like that disappointment go over their face, and then it starts this whole other thing. So honestly, again, depending on my mood, I almost prefer to roll with it. Like, yeah, I am a Colts fan, I am a Raiders fan, just see how well you can, talk ball from that. But yeah, the things that get us through the day. Hope you're looking forward to the cookies and cream, Dwayne. Hope you guys are looking forward to, again, my favorite episode of the Fantasy Life Show each and every week, with all due respect, to the other episodes. But with that, Dwayne, let's get into it. Rolling back the clock all the way to Thursday night when the Bengals took down the Steelers 33-31. Since he came in as a 5.5-point dog, won outright in the over, cash with ease at 45. And again, one of the more entertaining pure games of the year, particularly on Thursday Night Football, between a pair of AFC North teams that we were more so expecting a rock fight out of. So Joe Flacco, Dwayne, clearly more so resembled the guy that we saw in Cleveland 2 years ago and even Indy last year. 342 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Also had an electric 12-yard read option. That was a really fun time. Just really great to see. And moving forward, they get the Jets, the Bears, and then a bye. And then the Steelers again, Dwayne. Look, it's not Joe Burrow. I think we all realize that. But 85% Joe Burrow for this offense. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw what we needed to see. There's a lot of volume here. We know this is an offense that wants to throw the ball first, and they feel comfortable throwing the ball first with Flacco, which is really all that we need. And 7.3 yards per attempt. Yeah, it's not like some of the elite passers in the league right now, up over 8. But man, when you get to throw the ball that much and you have Mr. T. Higgins, who went off, and then obviously Jamar Chase, the Gritty King, as Zoe calls him. That's her team name, is the Gritty Kings, because she has Mr. Jamar Chase. So I made her hit the gritty on Thursday night. I went up to her room and made her do it. But yeah, man, it's looking really good. Like you said, we know it's not Joe Burrow. We're not delusional, but I feel better about all these weapons now. We all feel better.
Jamar Chase, $161 and a touchdown on 23 targets. He now has an NFL high 80 targets on the season, NFL high 58 receptions as well. As you mentioned, T. Higgins also with the big performance, 96 yards and a touchdown. Could have had a second one late. Decided to put his real life team in his best interest and not score a touchdown after toasting Jalen Ramsey. Would have been a lot cooler if he did for fantasy purposes, but still great to see T getting back in the right line. And yeah, mentioned last week him being a prime buy low candidate. Going to be a little bit harder to get him low moving forward, as he is going to be a weekly wide receiver too, as long as Flacco continues to play like this. So we also saw Noah Fant have himself a nice game, caught all 4 of his targets for 44 yards and a touchdown. Did he have a true every down role with both Mike Gesicki and Tanner Hudson out of action?
Close. 76% route participation, 9% target share. So, obviously, when you have so many balls going to Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, and Yoshi Voss was mixing in a little bit as well there. But Fant still came up with 14.4 fantasy points in this game. To your point, we didn't have Gesicki or Mr. Hudson. So I would expect a little less than that if one of them are back. I haven't seen the injury news on either of those, how long-term those are. I haven't looked that up yet. But if we were to be in another game without them, then yeah, I think we'd be looking at Fant as being like a mid-range tight end 2. We're like, hey, if he catches a touchdown, he's a tight end 1 this week.
Gesicki is on IR and out for the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Tanner Hudson could be more of a week-to-week situation. So good note there on Noah Fant. Again, guys, we have the bye Mageddon coming up here with 6 teams out there. So if you guys are in some of those deep, sicko, skank leagues, as Dwayne likes to call them, you could do worse than Noah Fant. Last point here, Dwayne. Chase Brown. Hey, how about Chase Brown, man? Finally got a run of 15-plus yards. He had racked up 96 consecutive ones without a gain of 15-plus yards. He finally got one. He actually had a great game overall, 108 yards on the ground, just 11 carries, though. And that, I guess, is my question, Dwayne. Even though it was a nice performance, still saw a lot of Samaje Perine out there.
Yeah, still saw plenty of P. Ryan, but we got to 63% of the snaps for Brown. Like, we're not in that territory we were to start this year or to end last year when essentially Chase Brown just never came off the field. He was getting these 80 and 90% snap shares, but 57% route participation, so still above the 50% mark. He had a 9% target share in this game. He's actually been pretty good from a target earning perspective this year. I think he's sitting now maybe at 12% on the season. Let me look at it real quick. In the utilization report, which you guys can look at, yes, 12%. I do know what I'm talking about. So, yeah, he's been a plus in the pass game as far as the targets go. Hopefully, Joe Flacco can get him going, and we can get some more fantasy points out of him. Still only gave us 12 this week, but I think the big thing here, Ian, is he did look a lot better. He had a utilization score of a 68. That was his best number since, I think, week 1 or 2. So, at least, hey, we'll take it right now. Signs of life. That's all we're looking for. We'll take it.
Was credited with 8 tackles avoided, second highest mark of the week. And again, given all those buys and the good matchup next week at home against the Jets, I do think Chase Brown is going to be back in the recommended start territory in the low-end RB2 range of things. So good stuff there. Over to the Steelers, who again, 31 points, just not quite enough though. So Aaron Rodgers, though, 249 yards through the air, 4 touchdowns, Dwain, all to his tight ends out there. Pat Freiermuth had 2, Jonnu Smith had 1, and Darnell Washington had another one. Unfortunately, I'm guessing because of all his involvement, we still unfortunately can't exactly rely on one single tight end because Arthur Smith loves to keep all these different guys involved.
Yeah, I mean, in this game, you got into the script where it was an absolute shootout, and it was a season high for Pat Freiermuth at 74% route participation, and we saw the trade-off going with Darnell Washington, who dropped down to 46%. He had led the team in the previous 2 weeks, but were more leading scripts for the Raiders. So for the Steelers, I think this is going to come down to how the game scripts are playing out, but we still have 3 tight ends operating here, Ian, and that's the big takeaway. So going to be very hard to trust these players. Freiermuth won't be someone I'm recommending as far as waiver wires go or anything like that. I get it. They've got their bye week out of the way. And it's a never say never. I mean, if Freiermuth has been a pretty good player in the past, he's never been an elite tight end, but my gut says this is going to continue to be a rotation. And this was a game script that really pushed him to get to be used more. I think the biggest thing, Ian, that I saw from this game from a utilization perspective here really was Jaylen Warren. Because last week we talked about Jaylen Warren being in his first game back, and we had Caleb Johnson involved. Now, that could be game script as well, because this was a different type of game they were playing, but he was much closer to what we saw in weeks 2 and 3 when we were talking about the fact that, hey, this might finally be like the Jaylen Warren season that we always wanted. In those 2 games, weeks 2 and 3, he had 58 and 78% of the snaps. He had 68% of the snaps in week 7, 84% of the rushing attempts. So in line with what we saw in week 2 and 3 at 70 and 81%. So best utilization, or tied his best utilization score of the season at an 87, his best fantasy points so far at 19.8 in this one. So we will have to give Jaylen Warren probably a bump back up towards that low end running back 2 territory. Not going to go crazy with it just because Arthur Smith, man, and the shenanigans, you never know, but he was clearly the lead ball carrier in this one, and still was pretty good. From a route participation standpoint, he had 50%. So that was right in line with what we were seeing weeks 2 and 3. Obviously, Kenneth Gainwell's still getting out there. He's a good receiver in his own right. So I don't ever expect Gainwell to go completely away, but this is a big positive for Jaylen Warren.
And just good to see the run game as a whole get back on track a bit. I mean, Warren was averaging south of 4 yards per carry coming into this one, finished with 7.9 on the evening, had a week high 9 tackles avoided, credited to him by the fine folks at PFF. And Dwain even had a sick cutback, 18-yard touchdown run nullified on, in my opinion, a ticky-tack holding call. Maybe my opinion's a little bit flawed because I certainly have Jaylen Warren rostered on plenty of fantasy teams. But regardless, good stuff there. And again, trending up in the right direction. I'm with you. Not going to make him this no doubt about it RB1 or anything after one great performance. It was the Bengals, after all, who did not have Trey Hendrickson. That said, he is about to be back next week. Still, though, good stuff there from Jaylen Warren. Otherwise, DK Metcalf, a bit of a dud, 50 scoreless yards. That did snap his 4-game touchdown streak, but we'll have a chance to get back on track against the Packers on Sunday Night Football. Defense hasn't exactly looked like their usual lockdown selves here over the past few weeks. So with that in mind, only other note, shout out Aaron Rodgers, man. That arm is still alive. I could not believe he got that Hail Mary about 70 yards into the end zone, Dwain. I'm pretty sure he even threw it further than Patrick Patrick Mahomes managed to the week before. So
Yeah.
good stuff there from the Steelers. Again, would have liked to get the win, obviously, but still very much on pace to finish 9-8 like always. Moving along, we can now get to the London game. The Rams took down the Jaguars 35-7 in a game that, man, really wasn't even that close. I think we can say, I mean, it was 21-0 at halftime. It was 28-0 in the early fourth quarter. So both these teams are going to be going on bye. So hopefully we will get Puka Nacua back in action following then. In the meantime, was Davante Adams taking over as Matthew Stafford's lead wide receiver. Y'all caught 5 of his 8 targets for 35 yards and not 1, not 2, but 3 touchdowns. He is now tied with Amon-Ra St. Brown, George Pickens, and Jake Ferguson with an NFL high 6 scores on the season. So Stafford threw 5 touchdowns on the day. Also found Konata Mumfield. He did not find Jordan Whittington, which kind of pissed me off, Dwayne, because I spent freaking minutes of my life hyping that dude up. Terrence Ferguson also scored 1. So really did seem like in the pass catching corps, it was Davante Adams and everyone else.
Yeah, it pretty much was. We had Adams leading the way. He had the 8 targets, 5 catches, 35 yards, 3 scores on the day. So 26.5 PPR points for you today from Davante Adams. He did lead the team with a 24% target share. Whittington was the wide receiver too, like from a route participation standpoint at 71%, 12% target share. We didn't see much of Tutu Atwell, only a 21% route share for him, but it really was spread across the tight ends. They got the work after Davante Adams. So Higbee led the way with the 6 targets, 3 receptions, and 19 yards. As far as playing time, Higbee was number 1 as well, but obviously the other guys very involved as well. So another one of these rooms that even if we have another game by some chance where we don't have Puka Nacua after the bye, I don't think there's much you can trust here besides Davante Adams. And my number 2 option on the team would still be Jordan Whittington if I was having to play someone from this receiving core.
Was an interesting game to see the Rams score, 35 points, only have 271 total yards and go 2 for 10 on third down. Certainly benefited, from some good field position here or there. But yeah, end of the day, Matthew Stafford now has an NFL best 17 passing touchdowns. That back is certainly feeling all right. Dwayne, let me know if you disagree, but I'm not really putting too much stock into Blake Corum and Kyren Williams having the same amount of carries at 12. 6 of Blake Corum's carries came on 1 drive up 3 touchdowns late in the fourth quarter. Again, this was a blowout script. So very much unfortunate that Kyren Williams isn't getting as many goal line carries. That's a point you brought up a few weeks ago. Again, we saw Stafford literally after Kyren got down the 1-yard line throw a fade Davante Adams for a touchdown. So maybe we don't have quite the same spike touchdown potential, but Kyren Williams still going to be a weekly low end RB1 more games than not.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. In the drives before the final drive, when most of Corum's work came, is what I put down on the sheet here. So you were already reading my mind. We didn't talk about this ahead of time, but Kyren had 71% of the snaps before that, 65% of the rushing attempts, and a 58% route participation. So basically in the role that we've seen him in every single week. It was mostly that last drive that boosted Corum. Before that, he had 28% of the snaps, 35% of the attempts, 21% route participation. So still the clear RB2 handcuff to Kyren, but nothing more than that right now.
Otherwise, get healthy Puka Nacua. Rams are going to be taking on the Saints after that Week 8 bye. But we were hearing again that Puka should hopefully be back by then. Over with the Jaguars, also are going to have a Week 8 bye to get healthy, and they might need that, Dwayne. Brian Thomas Jr. was holding his shoulder by the end of the game. We also had Tim Patrick hurting his groin. Even Diami Brown was in and out for parts of the game. All that said, we maybe did see the breakout of Travis Hunter. Maybe not even maybe, man. 101 yards and a touchdown, caught 8 of 14 targets. Yes, every single one of them came in the second half. This dude had a goose egg going after 30 minutes of football. But at the same time, hey, the man went out there and made those plays. I don't think the Rams were just letting the dude, walk up and down the field on him. So good stuff from Travis Hunter. Again, if we're going to have healthy versions of everyone else involved in Week 9 and beyond, can't exactly assume this is the new normal, but we got something, Dwayne. This dude was the wide receiver 75 in fantasy football coming into the game. So I think it's okay to be a little bit excited here.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should just take the positives. I don't think, we try to be like sober-minded about this stuff, but this is a step forward for Travis Hunter, and really this has been going on for multiple weeks. So if we look at his route participation over the last 5 games, Ian, it's gone from 63% to 74%, held at 74%, jumped to 88% in week 6, and then this weekend he was at a 90% route participation. Could some of that be due to injuries? Yeah, Brian Thomas Jr. was only out there 70% of the routes. You also mentioned that Diami Brown was dealing with an injury, so it could be that, but he had 88% the week before. It's almost the same as his 90% when those guys aren't hurt. So I think that this is a positive, the 24.1 fantasy points. And I'm like you, everybody, as soon as I posted something on Twitter, everything's about the garbage time. Guys, here's the thing. Garbage time happens. if we're going to remove garbage time for Travis Hunter, we have to go remove garbage time for every receiver in the league. And guess what? There's guys that you guys really love that get points at the end of the game in garbage time too. So the big thing that I look at is a 30% target share today. That's his best on the season. He operated outside plus from the slot. 8.5 average depth of target. So not everything came down the field, really more intermediate, which we can live with. We just don't want these games where he has like this 2 or 3 average depth of target. Those are the games where he's really, obviously he's dudded in multiple games, but that just makes it really tough on life as far as trying to score fantasy points. So very positive game, in my opinion, from Mr. Travis Hunter.
Again, keep an eye on the BTJ injury and all that. But again, in this offense, like we know Travis Hunter was always supposed to at least be the 1B at worst. It would make a lot of sense again if he can hopefully ride this high into some good stuff post-bye. Trevor Lawrence, otherwise, though, 296 yards and a touchdown through the air. The Jaguars did have a week high 4 drops. Their league high 20 drops on the season now is yet another evidence that Trevor Lawrence throws the most droppable ball in the NFL. I kid, but really it is wild that, we continue to see this year after year. So hopefully, again, after taking 7 sacks in this one, we can see Liam Cohen and company get in the lab and hopefully produce a more consistent passing game in week 9 and beyond. Any big takeaways in the ground, Dwain, other than just, Travis Etienne, who is averaging like 6.5 yards per carry in the first month, really has fallen off here the last few weeks?
Yeah, and his yards per carry are still good, but his PPR points in the last 3 games, 8.8, 9.5, and 6.5. It was a season low in snaps for him at 54%, a season low in route participation at 47%. And now on the season, he has 0 carries inside the 5-yard line. So it's just, we talked about some of these things being problematic and that like, hopefully like his big play ability and like him playing well would lead to like more opportunities that really lead to fantasy points, but he's just not that involved in the passing game. And these are just some of the woes that you have to live with. Like he's still going to be a really hard player to bench, Ian, in fantasy. Like he's going to be a hard guy for us to get outside of our top 24 because he's still getting enough of the work. It's just, we thought potentially with how well he was playing, maybe the role could grow and he might be more of a borderline running back 1. That just doesn't look like the case now. More of a low end running back 2.
People are going to have some annoying start-sit decisions to make, quarterbacks, tight ends on bye, Dwain.
Yeah.
How much of a mustache is Bashal Tuden for you? Because again, I see it, size, speed, freak. Okay, if Travis Etienne was out, he'd be on the cover of every single waiver wire article. But that goes for Tyler Algier. And, Chris and I were saying this morning in a start-sit question, like, you can't take a 0. Like, you got to cut these guys at some point. So just curious on kind of where you are with Bashal Tuden, because I do wonder if Travis Etienne missed some time, there is a chance that LaQuint Allen could complicate things here.
Yeah, but I still think we would really want to lean into Tuten. I just think the ceiling is going to be much higher with him. I also think there's still a door open to him carving out more of a role as they really haven't expanded ETN's game. So I would really prefer to not cut him. And it also all depends on like, what are you picking it up for? Like some people will, send you a message and it's like for Jordan Whittington, I'm probably just going to try to figure out, something else, I get it. Like you may have so many people on by that you have to cut someone, but I'm really trying not to cut these guys. Also, all the research that I've done on the rookies, if you look at them weeks 1 through 6 versus the rest of the season, they outscore what they did in the first 6 weeks over the rest of the year. So we know these guys can come on later, and Tuten definitely fits the profile of a guy that we know could give us a lot of upside. All your points are true. Like I'm keeping Tyler Algier over him. I'm keeping a lot of these other more clear-cut handcuffs over him. But at the same time, like he's probably pretty close to that conversation. They don't seem very interested in doing much with LaQuint Allen other than letting him play the long down and distance stuff. They definitely trust him out there on passing downs. He could kind of be a nuisance, but my gut says is that Tuten steps at least in, I don't want to say at least. I would say he probably just steps straight into ETN's role if ETN were to be out, which, it hasn't been the best. But if he gets to keep the carries inside the 5 and he adds on what ETN's doing, that's going to make Bashal Tuten very valuable.
And just as I'm kind of looking through the teams, trying to think like, okay, well, I take Bashal Tuten over their current backup running back. It's yes in almost every single situation. So I'm with you. Try to keep Bashal Tuten if at all possible. Again, probably unlikely he's going to have standalone value unless ETN misses time, but certainly still has looked good enough with his opportunities this year. And that's to Dwayne's point, really would be the front runner to take that ETN starter bell cow role. God forbid anything happens there. Otherwise, shout out Parker Washington, 52 yards, 154 unrealized air yards, tied for the second most on the week. So a lot of meat on the bone there. They were looking for him downfield, and also had a 62-yard punt return touchdown nullified on an illegal block above the waist. Would have been his second one on the season. Finally, Dwain mentioned Brian Thomas Jr., but man, 6 drops on the season now. He had 2 more today. Only Jerry Jeudy has more. It really does kind of look like he has the yips out there, man. I thought he was kind of overcoming it the last few weeks. We talked about how much his catch rate and yards per target have been so much better after, a really rough start to the season, but just disappointing. I guess we got to kind of see what happens with the shoulder issue. Just, I don't want to completely count out the last 3 weeks because those were good performances. Yeah. Now this is a bad one. It just kind of sucks.
Yeah, and I mean, just essentially what we're seeing are the ups and downs. Now, today was partially impacted, playing time for sure, by the injury, right? I think he would have been closer to that 85, 90% route participation if he's not battling through the shoulder and whatever else he was dealing with. But to your point, yeah, I mean, he and Trevor Lawrence consistently don't appear to be on the same page. And to your point, like, he's just dropping some balls he shouldn't drop. Some of them don't even have contact. Some of them are really tough catches, where you're like, okay, that's like down a sideline with 2 dudes on you. A lot of guys are going to drop that ball, 50, 40% of the time. That's just the way these, throws into tight windows work, or into contested coverage situations. It's not a very sticky stat. You'll see some people like, oh, this guy's got a 70% contested catch rate. Yeah, well, you know what? Mostly that's just going to average out. Obviously, there are some guys that can manage to keep that going. So BTJ, we've talked about him multiple times, but I think it just kind of is what it is right now, Ian. Like, we're hoping we have a wide receiver 2, meaning wide receiver 13 to 24 in fantasy, but we talked about him last week on the utilization report episode of our show on Tuesday. And we talked about, hey guys, there is still a range of outcomes when we plug him into the utilization score where he's a wide receiver 4. He just has a wide range of outcomes. There's a slim chance he's a wide receiver 1 this year. He's most likely a wide receiver 2 or 3. But there's also a world that plays out based on his historical comps where he's a wide receiver 4. And honestly, we're just kind of seeing him land in like those different buckets every week. It's a different one. It's like, oh, wide receiver 3, a wide receiver 2, oh, a wide receiver 4. So with BTJ, like, we still know what he did at the end of last year. So we know that we've seen it. But right now, I mean, we've got about as big of a sample this year as we do of him playing healthy last year. And it's just, I think we got to put it all together and just say it is what it is. Maybe more of a borderline wide receiver 2 right now, or high end wide receiver 3.
Following their week 8 bye, Jaguars get the Raiders. Certainly would be cool if a healthy BTJ can go out and take advantage of that smash matchup. On to the early afternoon slate. We had the Browns take down the Dolphins in that weather-induced mess up in Cleveland. Brownies won, though, 31-6, covering with ease as 2.5-point faves. Over even cash here at a lowly 34.5. So good stuff from Dylan Gabriel and company, winning with ease again, despite only having 206 total yards. So pick 6 help. Browns ultimately up 24-6 just after halftime. And this one really was never that competitive, in large part because Quinshon Judkins found his way into the end zone, not once, not twice, but 3 times. A 46-yard touchdown was absolutely sweet, showing off some of that acceleration. I will say, it was pretty tough sledding out there, only averaged 3.4 yards per carry, but Dwain, 84 rushing yards, 95 rushing yards after contact. Okay, that is one of the crazier discrepancies I've seen this year. Usually like the wild ones are maybe a yard or 2. I do not think I have seen 11 yards, after contact more than your actual rushing total. So yeah, either way, man, getting 25 totes on the ground, really great to see. And as long as we're going to get that, man, he's going to have these RB1 spike week potential all the time. We just got to remember there are going to be games like last week as well, where unfortunately you're not getting the goal line chances the same way.
Yeah, and I think the positive thing, though, for Quinshon is that he has actually been in several bad game scripts. Last week was a really bad one, to your point, and without the passing down work, he wasn't able to overcome it. But so far this season, he's given us 16.5, 21.5, 13.8. He had the dud of 3.6, and then we finally saw a leading game script today, which was 26.4 fantasy points. So I think he's kind of proven that, like, yeah, you could have a dud in there, but he seems to do enough, right, to not kill you in most weeks, which I think is a very positive thing to be able to say about a player. So I feel good about Quinshon Judkins. I think that your concerns are definitely warranted just because the Browns are a team like they can get down 20 like in a hurry, and that's the kind of scenario you've got to avoid. You got to kind of keep it around 10, and if it's like that, they seem to be willing just to really keep Judkins involved. So big game today. Friedman called it last week on the matchup show with you guys. We talked about it on the rankings, but hey, if we finally get Quinshon Judkins in a game where the Browns could be leading, what could happen? Well, 26.4 fantasy points with 3 rushing touchdowns. That's what can happen.
And just seeing some of the big playability, man, that's something that he flashed plenty at Ohio State. He had like a 90-yard touchdown against Marshall, super long run to national championship as well. But, wasn't exactly sure how well that would translate to the next level. Well, it is. And honestly, man, like, yeah, my concerns, like, whatever, though, at the end of the day, if you have Quinshon Judkins, you're starting him, whether we're ranking him as like the RB7 this week or maybe the RB13, 14 in a tougher spot next week in New England against a tough run defense where we are expecting, more of a negative game script. So good stuff there on Judkins. Otherwise, Dwain, look, Jerry Jeudy, again, he's the only wide receiver going into this week whose passer rating when targeted is worse than, I believe, 39.6, which is what a quarterback gets when they literally just spike the ball into the ground. So I cannot just fathom confidently starting Jerry Jeudy at this point. If you can, you are a better person than me. He's going to continue to be a volume-based wide receiver 4. And honestly, if you want to rank him lower, go right ahead. Only other person we care about in this offense right now, Dwain, is Harold Fannin. How much of a full-time role did he have with David Njoku sidelined?
He had a very, very full-time role, Ian, with 91% route participation and a 28% target share. Harold Fannin, guys, like, he's probably going to be a superstar. It's hard to say it's going to happen this year in this version of the Cleveland Browns offense, but he does get some of the easier targets. The problem for Jeudy is so many of his targets are uncatchable that it's a real problem. Fannin operates closer to the line of scrimmage. Ian's talked about this before. It can help alleviate some of the quarterback accuracy issues. It can also help alleviate weather issues, just different things. And so Fannin, he only gave you 7.6 fantasy points today, so it was obviously a disappointment. But man, just watching the guy play, looking at the data points, like, this is a very, very good tight end. And we're going to have future days where, it's not just due to a David Njoku injury, but this will be the full-time player, for the Browns. My guess is that if the Browns can't trade Njoku who has a pretty big contract, guys, if they can't trade him this year, I have a feeling Njoku's gone this offseason. And so if you have Fannin, you drafted him in fantasy, you're feeling really great. The only other quick note I would say is Isaiah Bond seemed to lose his grip really on being the wide receiver 2. It was more of a rotation today, 57% route participation for Isaiah Bond.
Just to echo the sentiment about how good Fannin is, guys, obviously running backs are going to lead the NFL in total tackles avoided. They have the most opportunities and sort of situations for that. Among all quarterbacks, among all wide receivers, and among all tight ends, though, Harold Fannin leads the league with 17 tackles avoided. And it's not like he's got 50 freaking catches already, Dwain. So dude truly is special. And again, I want to see David Njoku out there because he's a lot of fun to watch too. I know you said, Dwain, like he was a Spartan warrior and a past life and everything, but can we trade the guy, please?
Yeah, great question from the chat. Gnostic Grace says Quinshon Judkins, RB1 of the 2025 class. He's playing the best of all of them. Now, Omari Hampton was really coming on before the injury. And look, we still like Ashton Genty. He's in a terrible situation, guys. Like Ashton Genty, we'll get to the Raiders here in a little bit. I don't want to jump ahead. But I think it's a really good question. Judkins looks like the biggest playmaker of all of them. And I get it. He's not the passing down guy. He never was in college either. But man, I could see if a team let him just basically play all the snaps, I think he would be like Jonathan Taylor. He's not going to be, oh God, he's getting an 18% target share, but I think he could probably play all the downs and get a 10% target share and handle all your rushing attempts and give you these big plays. I do have to say, eye test only, I think he does look like the best back of the class. If you're making me draft a dynasty team tomorrow, it's so tough. You don't want to overreact to such a small sample because the Raiders are going to get better. They're going to make their offensive line better. I probably still lean Genty, then Hampton, then Judkins, but I would just say they're very close, and I would be happy to draft any of them.
And Hampton's attached to the Chargers. You're not going to have Najee after last year, and you got Herbert and Harbaugh. You can feel good about that. But aliens invade tomorrow, Dwain, and instead of just playing us in a regular football game to save humanity, but they actually added that, hey, you guys can only use rookies. I think I go with Judkins right now.
Yeah, I think for this year, there's no arguing that he's looked the best of them. There's just not. And you can't debate it either in the stats. The only thing is that he doesn't get the pass down work and the targets. But just as far as the way he looks playing, I do think he looks the best.
Genty's situation has been miserable. Did you guys hear the stat I opened up with Judkins? He has the same yards after contact stuff that's going on with Genty every single week as well. Judkins is actually just making a little bit more out of it to this point.
That's true.
Again, not trying to make this Genty slander or anything like that, but Judkins really, really been impressive so far. Otherwise, for the Dolphins, Dwain, 219 total yards of offense. They had 11 penalties for 103 yards, 1 for 13 on third downs, 2 through 3 interceptions. One of them did go off of Achane's hands. So again, not a situation where every single interception can be blamed on the quarterback. That said, now on the season, he is tied with Geno for the league lead with 10. Didn't see Zach Wilson as QB2. It was actually Quinn Ewers. Do you think we could be looking at a quarterback change, Dwayne? Because, man, Mike McDaniel's seat might as well be on fire at this point. And we know we're getting with Tua in an offense without Tyreek at this point. I feel like McDaniel's only chance to try to put another quarterback in there to show that he can actually get something out of someone who isn't freaking Tua at this point.
I mean, possibly. I doubt it because I don't think Quinn Ewers is very good. And I think we know how we feel about Zach Wilson. I feel like if there was a more competent backup to challenge Tua, maybe, but like they've still got a lot of money invested in Tua. They ran into a buzzsaw today. I don't think there's much we can take away from this. I think, the Dolphins are
Did they, though?
they're 1-6 for a reason.
We call the Browns a buzzsaw?
Yeah. I mean,
this shouldn't have been a buzzsaw.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, it's just the way the game worked out. I mean, you just have shitty games sometimes. Look, the Dolphins are 1-6. Like they very clearly are not the Dolphins that we were used to seeing in 2023 or 2022, right? This unit is not even as good as what we saw at the end of 2024 when they kind of turned things around. So I'm not saying that it's not, something we should be worried about. Obviously we should. I just don't think the answer will be one of the backup quarterbacks. Like Tua has played bad enough though. You throw 3 picks, like you definitely open the door to a benching. So I would never say never. And if Mike McDaniels, if that's like his prerogative, that he thinks that's the thing he can do to try to show something about himself as a play caller and as a coach, then maybe I don't know. Like I wouldn't feel good about it in fantasy. I would prefer Tua over those guys as far as the weapons like Waddle and Achane.
Right now, Tua's contract, you can't really get out of it until 2027, not the earliest. But it actually is a reasonable, drop off in terms of what they would owe him, dead money, cap savings, and all that. So looking like at least another year of the Tua experience in Miami. To Dwayne's point, I do agree. We know we're getting there. And hey, guess what? We're getting there more weeks than not. RB1 performances out of Achane. Borderline wide receiver 1 performances out of Jalen Waddle, and a lot of good stuff from Darren Waller when he's not dealing with the pec injuries. So all in all, Dwayne, given the weather, given the tough matchup, I'm fine throwing this one out. But just next week, man, they're going into Atlanta to take on the Falcons defense. That's, let's face it, it's been really good more weeks than not. Like, I'm not going to be confidently firing. I'm going to fire up Achane and Waddle. We'll see about Waller. Like, okay, I'm not going to hang this performance against them, but I just feel like the bust potential is higher than I would have preferred here. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think Waddle's a wide receiver too still. I mean, like people have bad games. He was only out there for 69% of the routes. They kind of shut him down towards the end of the game. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Waller. I'm kind of worried that he's going to miss next week. But it's just Waddle or Achane. If you have those two players, you're playing Achane in every fantasy league, and Waddle you're playing him in the majority of fantasy leagues, and then everything else like is off limits. Like there's nothing to talk about.
Hey, Dwayne, Jalen Wright, 16% snaps. He's alive.
He had 0% of the carries, I think. Maybe he just took those. Maybe he took the final. I did see the snaps, but he didn't have a carry. So maybe he was just. Maybe they attached him to Quinn Ewers and let him roll out there at the end of the game. So.
Dude, look, I saw in the preseason how much better Ollie Gordon looked. Ollie Gordon, though, this year is averaging 2.6 yards per carry. Like, God,
either.
I know. I will not waste any more of your all's time with Jalen Wright, but I thought that was funny. The Bears took down the Saints 26-14. Chicago covered at home as 4.5-point favorites to capture their 4th straight W. How about that? Under a 43.5 did cash. So this one, the Bears were up 20-0 until just before halftime, but Rather and company started to make it a little bit competitive. All right. So Bears pulled away there at the end, but there was, a little bit of uneasiness, I think, going around in the Windy City there for just a little bit because it really wasn't the cleanest overall offensive performance. We had another game with a lot of penalties, 10 for 92 yards. Bears only went 3 for 12 on 3rd down and just didn't exactly get, the sort of efficient passing performance out of Caleb Williams that maybe we would have preferred against a lowly defense like the Saints. The weather wasn't great in this one either, but man, just 172 yards. No touchdowns, also got -2 rushing yards. This was by far Caleb Williams' worst fantasy performance of the season. So next week, though, Dwayne, they're going to be in Baltimore against the Ravens. I think we've seen enough from Caleb to believe that better fantasy days should still be ahead here. I'm not going to completely, run him down the ranks because of one bad performance. It would be cool, though, if we start seeing, again, more consistency from him, this Ben Johnson offense as a whole.
Yeah, I think he's just played too well as far as a fantasy asset. Like this stuff happens. Like I'm not letting this change my opinion at all, like on Caleb Williams. We know guys have ceilings. We know they have floor games. Mostly Williams has been fine. Before this week, I think he was averaging like 23, 22 and a half fantasy points per game. So we know that he can still run. He has weapons. Like you said, there were a lot of factors today, the weather, what they got up with. They ran the ball more. They only dropped back to pass 26 times today. They ran the ball 40 times. So a lot of this was game script. I'm with you. Like to see more efficiency, but it happens. 6.6 yards per attempt today. Not ideal, but Caleb is going to be fine. Still a mid-range QB1.
With only 26 pass attempts. Obviously, didn't get a ton of booms from the pass catchers. DJ Moore had a team high 43 yards through the air. Another dud for Rome Odunze. I will add, last week we had a few near misses. Even a cool touchdown got nullified on a pretty ticky-tack, illegal formation penalty on the Bears. So Rome Odunze, Dwain, even if maybe we were a little bit carried away with throwing him into the top 6 of the wide receiver rankings, maybe we weren't carried away, but regardless, okay, moving down to wide receiver 13 if you want. We're still going to be starting him each and every week, so wouldn't be too worried there. Maybe even a situation, Dwain, where we'll get into the Yahoo trade streets and see if there's a buy low opportunity. You think it could be there for Rome?
Yeah, I mean, he still had a 24% target share today. They just didn't throw the ball that often. So, I mean, he led the team. He had 100% route participation. He's not coming off the field. Again, guys, these things happen, and they can happen 2-3 games at a time. And then everybody thinks it's a trend, but it's not necessarily. If the targets and the routes and that stuff are still there, you just want to lean into the player that's already shown you. And Rome's game has grown. I had Matt Harmon on, talked about a lot of the things that he's doing better this year. And so I'm remaining bullish on Rome Odunze. I think it's fine if you want to call him a borderline wide receiver 1 or a high end wide receiver 2, but he's still an asset you're very happy that you drafted more as a wide receiver 4, most likely. Some of you might have got him as your wide receiver 5, if you went really heavy on your wide receivers early in your draft. So yeah, I still like Odunze. Just real quickly on the rest of the room, I'll skip DJ Moore. He had an 8.2 fantasy points today. He led their receivers in fantasy points. So that's how bad the day was when an 8.2 leads the way. Burden did not really have a larger route, larger role, 33% of the routes. Now Loveland did get more work today. We had Cole Kmet injured on the 10th drive of the game. So prior to that, though, Loveland had a 57% route participation with a 15% target share in the 2 drives after Cole Kmet was out. Obviously, that jumped up to 85% of the routes. Very small sample, guys, here, just 2 drives, but he had a 29% target share on that. So we'll see what the deal is with Cole Kmet. Does sound like he's probably going to miss next week. So I would guess Loveland probably flirts with that 80% route participation. He's on a lot of waiver wires. Ian, you and I have even seen him in the Skank League streets. And unfortunately, we probably cut him a few times last week because we had some tough calls to make in certain spots. But I think Loveland, if we don't have Kmet, we'll be ranking him as a borderline tight end 1 to low end tight end 1.
I would love to see the Bears really start to put things together here, and they are going to have the schedule and the opportunities to do so against the Ravens next week, then the Bengals, then the Giants before things start to toughen up a little bit again. So hopefully that passing game can click. Certainly would help matters if things are going to be a little bit condensed there. So keep an eye on that Cole Kmet back injury. Otherwise, Dwayne, another really nice performance from DeAndre Swift, despite being limited throughout the week with that groin injury and being questionable up until game time. He went ahead and rushed for 124 yards on the ground, chipped in 14 receiving, also had another touchdown. So now averaging 16.1 PPR points per game. That is good for RB11 status. Even had another instance where he got tackled on the 1 yard line and, wasn't able to score on the same drive. So honestly, at this point, I know it's been more up recently, but we talked about it, man. Even the first 4 weeks of the year, he was giving you kind of the lower end RB2 numbers that you drafted him at in the first place. Very much looking like, again, a pretty freaking great back for where you drafted him. That said, I do think seeing, Roshan Johnson active and getting a carry or 2 here and there has led us to really just see straight up that Kyle Monangai is the clear RB2 here. If you guys do have some extra bench spots, I can think of worse handcuffs you want to have.
Yeah, I think Monangai is the guy for sure to roster. He is available he is available a lot as well. It was close today, Ian. Now Swift had the 20.8 fantasy points. Monangai had 17.4. Snaps 52% to Swift. Now this might be due to the injury he was dealing with. 46% to Monangai. So right there. Now more carries for Swift. He had 50% versus 34% for Monangai. More routes, 48% versus 37%. But those are closer numbers than what we've seen in the previous week. So we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on it. Might very well be due to the injury that he popped up with late in the week, and they just wanted to, rest him a little bit. But Monangai made the most of his opportunities. Like I said, with 17.4 PPR points today. But yes, he should be rostered, especially in deep leagues, medium-sized leagues. You guys that play in like an 8-team league that don't have a lot of roster spots, like you're probably not messing with Monangai. But we know if you're listening to this and it's on a Sunday night and you're here with us, you probably play in a sicko league like we do. So if that's the case, Monangai is definitely a pickup.
I think it's also probably a situation where you said it, man. They ran the ball 40 times out there. I don't want DeAndre Swift getting 35 carries. I'm sure Ben Johnson doesn't either. So it made sense to, again, get Monangai a little bit more work than usual. And to his credit, 81 yards on 13 carries, made the most out of those. So again, Bears at the Ravens next week. Hopefully we get a good old-fashioned shootout in that one. Meanwhile, with the Saints, again, shot themselves in the foot a little bit, just 3 for 10 on third down. Spencer Rattler, despite having some good throws, mostly to Chris Olave, threw not one, not two, but 3 interceptions, also took 4 sacks and lost a fumble. Ultimately, Dwain, we only had the Saints working with a little bit over 23 minutes of time of possession. So again, Bears were certainly holding the ball and run the ball and doing their thing. But yeah, man, situation where Rattler, we've seen some highs, we've seen some lows. Do I think he's going to be this incredible quarterback moving forward? No, but I think he's shown enough to at least, still be in a starting conversation somewhere. And right now that somewhere is New Orleans. So good stuff there, particularly Dwain, when he is playing well enough to get your guy Chris Olave doing big things. You wrote a couple weeks ago that he was a prime buy low candidate. He was not scoring touchdowns. Well, now he is, and he's still getting a lot of targets. Funny how that works, Dwain.
Yeah, well, and just with Olave, I know he was kind of pegged into that low A dot thing, and I get why people were getting concerned, but you just can't lose the prior history of the player. And we had talked about Olave had really been a good down the field threat, like for his career, period. Like every year, like cooking dudes, and honestly had been really unlucky as far as his quarterbacks missing him quite often after he had already burned the DB. So today we got a touchdown in the end zone. We got another long pass down the field. We had a long one last week, but yeah, 26.8 fantasy points with a 23% target share, 139 air yards. He led the team at 38%. He had a 19.9 average depth of target this week. Does that mean we think Olave is going to do this thing every single week, guys? No. But the point is, like, these things can just happen. And it's a situation where he's still going to have games where he gets to work down the field, even though we know that he's being more used in the intermediate and underneath areas of the field right now. He's got the skill set to still pop. So on the season, man, now he's basically reached where the utilization score said he should be. He was like at 12.5 points, and his comps have been right at 15 fantasy points per game. 14.9 is where he's at now. Right. So now he's leveled out. 93% routes on the year, a 31% target share, averaging 99 air yards per game. So really good things from Olave.
Love seeing that. Again, he was already in kind of the low end wide receiver 2 group, and I would imagine to venture with 6 teams on bye, he's going to be cracking into top 20 in week 8. So love to see that. Unfortunately, with Olave, really hogging all the big plays, Rashica, he wasn't able to get a ton going. He did catch 4 passes for 40 yards, and again, he's caught 4 passes every single game this year. So I know last year, Dwain, his duds out there were literal goose eggs. So it's nice to see still 8 PPR points and everything. Had a couple deep shots out there. Again, they were more than willing to test that Bears defense. Unfortunately, though, 110 unrealized air yards for Shaheed, 5th most on the week. Still going to be stuck in that boom or bust wide receiver 3 zone. It was good to see Dwain Johnson get going again a little bit. 5 catches for 79 yards. Of course, as we've seen the last month or so, can't exactly be guaranteeing that each and every week, but still, a kind of deeper league-ish shot at the position if you want. The real big news, though, here, Dwain, comes down to the reality that Kendre Miller ruled out the knee injury, and Kellen Moore did say afterwards that there is concern here. So a lot of injuries, man. Also, center Eric McCoy got hurt with a biceps issue. Look, it's looking like we're going to see Alvin Kamara get force-fed the football now if his snap rate today was any indication of what could be coming. But it's just one of those things, Dwain, where, man, even without Kendre Miller, I'm not sure I'm going to be firing up Kamara, inside the top 12 or anything like that.
Yeah, and this all really folds together based on what we've seen so far. When we had Kendre Miller, taking rushing attempts from Kamara, that's when Kamara was being targeted more often. And you talked about Dwain Johnson. He had a 23% target share today. Well, now Kamara took back over those carries from Kendre Miller because he got hurt pretty early in the game. And to your point, he had an 85% snap share, 69% of the rushing attempts. His target share, which had been up around 20% for the last 2 to 3 weeks, fell to 10%. So there's something going on here potentially with managing Kamara's load. And it's more around not the target share of the carries, but probably some sort of touch limit like that they're wanting to put on him from a week to week standpoint. So I do think that this is potentially good for Dwain Johnson for more than the week, depending on how long we could be without, Kendre Miller. So we'll see what happens with that. I do agree with you. Like if, to play Kamara, and really move him up the ranks, and it could still happen, guys. Like some of this stuff is just variance. Next week we got, oh my God, Alvin Kamara had 70% of the carries and a 20% target share. We know it's certainly in his range of outcomes. And if he does that, like, it's going to be hard for him to not be a running back one on a lot of slates, even on a team that we don't necessarily love. But to your point, this is an offense that's playing better, man, over the last 3 games. Spencer Rattler, yeah, he threw the 3 picks today, but man, pushing the ball down the field, yards per attempt are up over the last 3 games. So it's an offense that at least has, like, it has a pulse. I don't think we look at this as being, oh my God, it's a dumpster fire we have to avoid. And just real quick on Shaheed, dude, he did lead the team with a 29% target share. So it just didn't come through with the fantasy points, but it could have been a much better day for Rashid Shaheed.
Just sucks seeing Alvin Kamara go out there, man, get to touch the ball 13 times, only have a long of 6 freaking yards. So I think it's similar to Saquon where, yeah, it's not happening again and again. It's not, but then you'll see a glimpse. And today the glimpse was like this actually kind of cool play. 3rd and long, they got the ball at Taysom. I'm about to say something nice about Taysom Hill, Dwain. They got the ball at Taysom in the middle of the field. He actually took a couple steps and then threw it to the sideline to Kamara, who caught the ball and had some running room, show some burst again. Unfortunately, what the NFL does with these mid-play laterals, they slow it down and they, figure out that's literally half an inch forward, which, yeah, I get it is against the rules. I'm sure, would it be Bills fans from the Music City Miracle back in the day? Wish we had that technology going back then. So I just feel like every single time there's one of these mid-play laterals, it's like, oh, that was actually cool. And it looks exactly like it was backwards. And then they slow it down and we figure out it's not. But just a pet peeve of mine. Next week, we're going to have the Saints taking on the Buccaneers. And look, man, that is the sort of matchup that concerns me here with Kamara because past years, great. Who needs rush attempts? We'll get 10 targets for Kamara and he'll do his freaking thing. Just can't be super confident of that right now. But yeah, keep an eye on the Kendre Miller knee injury. Devin Neal will be the next man up after that. Moving right along, we had the Patriots take down the Tennessee Titans in the Mike Vrabel Revenge Game Bowl, 31-13. Patriots were up 31-13 halfway through the third quarter. So yeah, this one wasn't exactly a nail biter. Kudos to the Patriots though, covering 6.5-point favorites. The overcashed here at 41 as well. Dwain, Drake May, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns on 21 of 23 passing. Only Jared Goff has a better completion rate on the season right now. I think Patrick Mahomes is
broke Tom Brady's record for a single game, which was 88%.
Like, this is
the best game in the history of the Patriots, man. It's insane.
Like, this dude was supposed to be not raw coming out, but had some work to do. And now he's just coming out and averaging 75% on the season. Again, Mahomes, MVP front runner coming in today. And I do not think a single thing about his performance is going to change that. But dude, Drake May could have a top 3 finish on his hands. And that is incredible progress for a guy that, again, they added Stephon Diggs. We got Josh McDaniels. And they're like, they made improvements from last year. How could they not with how bad it is? But he's still putting this offense on his back, man. Like, I just feel like even the biggest Drake May stands got to be surprised about how freaking great these first 7 weeks have gone this year.
Yeah, man, playing absolutely fantastic, averaging 8.6 yards per attempt, 249 passing yards per game, Ian. If you look at his fantasy points, he is now averaging 20 points. So let's just call it 21. I was about to say 20.99. I guess I still said that out loud. But today he gave you 23.1. Last week he gave you 27.2. And, man, he's doing this stuff through the air, but he's also picking up steam on the ground. I mean, we've got 4 games this year where he's ran for 29 yards or more. Today was a season high, 62 scramble yards on the day today. So doing all the things we want, man. He can give you an extra 2.5 to 4 fantasy points on the ground. And then he's just really looking good as a passer. 1.71 passing touchdowns per game. Guys, that's a really good number. Anytime you're up towards the 2, you're going to be among the league leaders. 5.9% of his passes have gone for touchdowns. So not quite at the Stafford level on the year, but really good. Like, Drake May is playing absolutely out of his mind. And Ian, he doesn't have a great supporting cast. Like, we like Stephon Diggs, but dude, like, this guy's doing this with almost nothing. I mean, he's literally elevating the whole team, putting the whole team on his back. Drake May is a superstar.
And the style points, man, he even said in his post-game interview, not just trying to be a check down Charlie. He's not, man. Like, he's been one of the most prolific, accurate passers throwing the ball downfield and just getting as much as he had out of Kayshon Boutte, who caught another long touchdown today and had 55 yards. Really has been great to see. We got Mac Hollins making big plays downfield. Demario Douglas had 2 60-plus yard touchdowns last week. They took one off the board on a BSOPI, but again, really just has been impressive. We'll give Austin Hooper some credit. He did actually have a pretty sick catch in the back of the end zone. I liked your dad joke Dwayne Austin Hooper. Shout out to you. But yeah, man, passing game doing good stuff. It'd be cool if it was a little bit more concentrated, but man, I'm not going to blame Drake May or the Patriots. They're playing winning football and doing things. So Stephon Diggs still going to be more of a volume base, wide receiver 2 in weeks with a lot of buys, maybe more like a wide receiver 3 rest of the season. Still pretty good where you managed to draft him. The real story though, Dwayne, is the backfield takeover, because Ramondre Stevenson, man, what if he fumbles 15 times a year? Who cares? He's out there doing his thing. Hey, all jokes aside, Ramondre ran really well today. He had 7 tackles avoided, third highest of the week. And just from the beginning, man, dude was running angry. So not trying to take anything away from Stevenson. He has a huge role now.
Yeah, 16.8 PPR points today. Our ceiling, Xfinity best model really liked him in the projections this week. He didn't quite get to the ceiling that was there, but he was above the median projection that we had for him. And now we have 2 games, Ian, without Antonio Gibson. And Ramondre Stevenson in those 2 games has handled 74% of the snaps, 62% of the rushing attempts, 100% of the work inside the 5-yard line as far as snaps go, 67% route participation, and he's handled 60% of the 2-minute offense. And guess what? His numbers were better than that in every category today. He had 69% of the carries today with a 77% snap share. So, yeah, Trevion Henderson officially dead, not even a running back 4 anymore. He's now a running back 5. You're only stashing him just because you spent a high pick on him and you don't want to release him and something happens to Stevenson and then he goes off and then, we don't want you having to call like a mental health helpline because we'll be there with you too, guys. And we're not making fun of that. Trevion Henderson has been terrible on my mental health this season. 0.5 points today. It's just like, come on, man. 14% of the snaps, and you had a great tweet. It's like, okay, now the Patriots are leading. Let's give Henderson some run. Nah, Terrell Jennings, get out there. Like, dude, they do not like Trevion Henderson right now. They're trying to send him a message. I don't know what he's doing in practice, apparently fumbling every other play or something. Or maybe he's dating Mike Vrabel's daughter. Whatever it is, like, it needs to stop because Trevion Henderson is absolutely freaking buried.
And that's the part I don't get, man, because I even think Henderson's haters coming out were like, okay, this guy can't handle a full-time workload. He's more of a gadget player. He's not even getting gadget touches. Like, we're going 60 minutes, not even throwing the guy a single target. We're having 2 carries up the middle, like when Ramondre was just tired. There's just no creativity with it. And I know Josh McDaniels can do more. We've seen what he's done with receiving back. So, look, again, it's a situation where, yeah, we were dumb for drafting him as much as we did and as high as we did and all that. But just now at some point, we got to look at the Patriots and be like, you guys did use the 38th overall pick on this dude. You remember that? You drafted him, a top 40 player. Like, you didn't have any plan for like what to do with it. So, again, going well.
It feels like something's happening, though, Ian, in practice or something. Like, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if it's being late to meetings. Like, I'm not trying to pin any of these things on him, but there is something behind the scenes happening with Trevion Henderson. I think the big takeaway here is Ramondre Stevenson, low-end running back 2. Like, and we may move him up again. Like, right. I mean, he's in a role. Like, I don't want to get too aggressive with it because we've seen Stevenson get a big workload like a couple of times this year, or a decent workload, and do nothing with it. So we're not saying like he's suddenly like this great player, but Mondre is a guy that, the whole fantasy community loved just 2 years ago. And it's funny how no one wants to like him now. Or, oh man, he sucks. And just like the same people 2 years ago, man, this guy's got a good targets per route run. I kind of like what this guy does. So I think Stevenson's a low end running back too, until we're shown otherwise. And Henderson's just on our bench.
This year is like the comeback of 2022 running backs. We got Mondre, Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, all doing good things out there. It's like, yeah, guys, I still exist too. I'm still doing things as well. So next week is going to be tough against the Browns. Again, we've seen these Patriots running backs as a whole struggle to really get moving. And they also did benefit today from Titans defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons getting hurt early with a hamstring injury. So again, not going to be rocketing Stevenson up the ranks, but I say it in every single,
it'll be hard to have him out of your 24. So.
Yeah, dude. And even if you want to have him as more of a low end guy, like whenever I kind of do my quick RB usage breakdown in my 10 things article, like I'll be like, all right, here are all the guys with 70% plus snaps, like 12 or 15 of them are auto starts, and the 3 that aren't, I have these concerns. But then I always add the caveat, Dwayne, like even at the same time, like if I have a close start sit decision between a guy looking at 18 or so touches per game versus a wide receiver, I'm going to take the running back more times than not anyway. So good stuff if you did go ahead and get yourself some Ramondre Stevenson. Meanwhile, with the Titans, Cam Ward took 5 more sacks up to 30 on the season. He is now on pace for 73. Offensive line not helping, but Cam Ward's not helping either, guys. And when you look at just, again, pressure to sack sack rate. How many sacks are you taking when under pressure? He has a league worst 29.7% mark. Also, Dwain lost another fumble that literally he just dropped as he was trying to throw the football. This has now happened to him in back-to-back weeks. So horrific offensive environment. I get it. We are throwing the things named Chimere Dike, which we should probably figure out how to say his name. He actually did have a nice touchdown today.
You just said
DK,
it right.
Okay. There we go. Good throw from Cam Moore on that one. Again, he's flashed the arm talent, and just some of that phone at the end of the Cardinals game, I get was awesome. I have zero confidence in it actively turning around in a meaningful way in the year 2025, Dwain.
Agree. I think we can move forward. It's a split backfield between Pollard and Spears. Spears is the pass down back. Pollard's getting the early down work. If you look at the wide receiver core, DK did come through with 16.9 PPR points today, but a 67% route participation. We did not have Calvin Ridley active for this game. He missed today. Isle Manor led the team in route participation at 97%, but only gave you 4.9 PPR points. And that's your lesson. When you're dealing with this offense, you could be out there 100% of the time. And you still just might score 5 fantasy points as a wide receiver. So if at all possible, you just don't want to have any of these players on the field on your fantasy team. You're going to have some buys coming, so I get it. Pollard and Spears might be in the mix, but I'm trying to avoid all these wide receivers, Ian. I don't really want to mess with any of them.
Guys, if you're into praying, just feel free to throw one out there. Tony Pollard trade. It would give us 2 running backs we can all of a sudden get behind. I could get behind that. So next week, Titans are going to be taking on the Colts and Indy. I will not be excited to start any of their fantasy options in that one. Moving right along, we have the Kansas City Chiefs take down the Raiders 31-0. KC covered with ease as 13.5-point faves. The under did cash though at 44.5. The return of Rashee Rice, Dwain. We caught 7 of 10 targets for 42 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Honestly, could have even been 3 on their second drive of the game. They gave him another one of those, cute little design, just pop passes up the middle that Andy Reid loves doing inside the 5-yard line. Unfortunately, it was a false start, but it did look like Rice probably had the, way to get into the end zone. So, all jokes about the 4.2 yards per target aside, it's such money between him and Mahomes on these quick hitting plays, and they design them so much. Like, even if there is like some sort of like a Wandale PPR scam joke in there, like, I don't know, man, he scores so many touchdowns. Who freaking cares how he gets the point? I just hope that, again, we had kind of the tweet from Yahoo saying how 14.4% of teams with Rashee Rice have a 4-2 record or better. 68% of the teams are 2-4 without him. So I don't want to sit here and be like, you guys were so freaking dumb if you didn't draft Rashee Rice. I think everyone realized he was going to be great when he's back. The question was he going to be top 5 grade or maybe top 15 grade? Through 1 week, Dwain, he's looking like he's top 5 grade. So if you have him and your fantasy team is still good, awesome.
Yeah, he's for sure top 12, probably top 6. 23.2 PPR points today. Only a 48% route participation. They didn't give him his full rollback yet. That number is going to go up. Now, obviously, he had a 29% target share with a 53% targets per route run. Like, that's not going to continue on. But at the same time, like, this is a guy that's just done well anytime like he has been on the field over the course of his career. And whenever he's out there in a more full-time role, I think we're going to feel good about him being a 20-point per game guy in PPR. I think we'll probably have JSN, we'll have Puka, and then we'll have Jamar Chase. But Rashee Rice, like, he's somewhere in that mix. I know Igbuka's played really well, but my gut says Rashee Rice outscores Igbuka the rest of the way once the Bucs get back the rest of their weapons. And dude, Patrick Mahomes just freaking balling out, dude. And they're throwing the ball all the time. It's like, people can pick him apart. They can say whatever they want about it. It doesn't matter in this offense. He's going to score the fantasy points.
286 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air for Mahomes. Their first 4 drives of the game were all touchdowns. Mahomes actually hit the bench before the fourth quarter had even started. There was also a hilarious play, Dwain, on 4th and 1 where they motioned a couple guys. Mahomes yelled to the sideline, "I effing told you it wouldn't effing work." And then they actually did snap the ball.
That was hilarious.
The Chiefs are fully back in their bags at this point, just clowning on the rest of the NFL. At this point, if you had to say they're Super Bowl favorites, at the very least the AFC favorites, who would I be to disagree with you there? So unfortunately, Dwain, with so much of the attention going to Rashee Rice in this passing game, Xavier Worthy seems like he could be someone falling off a bit, maybe not giving us the sort of return we were hoping for when we spent, a top 6 round pick most likely on the guy. So still found his way to get 48 total yards. He cashed a rushing prop bet, which was good to see. We know they're going to try to design ways to get him to football, but man, shoulder was still bothering him a little bit out there. You could see that at one point. Made a nice contested catch. Like, I still think Xavier Worthy is a good football player, but to me, in the hope of seeing him be this, simultaneous top 20 receiver alongside Rashee Rice, it just seems like with how much Hollywood, Juju, Tyquan Thornton, and even Travis Kelce are also still involved, if I had to put my money on it, I would say Xavier Worthy, boomer bust wide receiver 3 the rest of the way.
Yeah, and we talked about that as well last week, that's probably the territory we were already moving Worthy towards. We were kind of hoping, okay, one last week in the low end wide receiver twos. Come on, Xavier Worthy, prove us wrong. Like we move you down, like show us that we're idiots. 7.8 PPR points today. 75% route participation, though, that was number one on the team. So he was still out there a lot. But to your point, they're just rotating a lot of these guys. Now, we don't know, like when Worthy's fully healthy, will he be more like at 85 and Rashee Rice will be at 85%? The Chiefs are not necessarily a team, except when they had Tyreek Hill, where they have a guy out there 95%. Like they do always kind of have a rotation across these guys. So I don't think we're going to see any of them in that 90% range, but I think we could still see it when they're fully healthy, them both being over 80. And just Mahomes is playing so good. Like I just, there's still a lot of room for Worthy to come through for us, but I do agree with you. I think boom bust wide receiver 3 is where he sits right now, but I think the booms could still be really great, Ian. Like we could still get some massive games out of Worthy. So if you got him in best ball, obviously there's nothing you can do about it now, but I think you're still going to get paid off with the big games that'll make it worth him being on your team. In a managed league, it could get a little more tricky depending on how deep your wide receiver room is, and you're having to make some of these decisions. But for most of you, it should still be pretty easy to start Xavier Worthy, especially if you're getting to start 3 wide receivers in like a flex. If you're in a league that only starts 2 wide receivers and there's not a flex, yeah, you're probably going to have Worthy on the bench some in that kind of format.
I mentioned Worthy shaking out his shoulder. He did return after the drive, after we kind of saw him on the sideline, so no reason to believe it's, a new injury or something that's going to keep him out. We did have a couple other injuries, though. Their right tackle, Jawan Taylor, suffered a shoulder issue, and the right guard, Trey Smith, had a back injury. So, again, the few times over the years we have seen the Chiefs look mortal, it has been when that offensive line has been giving them problems. Obviously, we have the Josh Simmons personal stuff going on, too. Just some stuff to keep an eye on there in Kansas City. The other injury, Dwayne, that I do think was impacting this backfield, though, is Kareem Hunt, because on the first drive of the game, it looked bad, man. Like he honestly had his arms on Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes being helped off the field. I wasn't expecting to see him. He did come back the next possession, but I even checked the snap rates, man. From drives 3 till the end of the game, we did not see any more Kareem Hunt. So with that in mind, I'm a little bit worried about putting too much stock in the Brashard Smith breakout, if you will, or even Isaiah Pacheco just having another quality week.
I agree. Like, so last week we saw Pacheco really step forward and he got that 77% snap share. And it was one of those things in utilization pro. I'm like, hey, we don't know it's going to continue, but like, obviously it's got our interests. We'll continue to monitor it. It didn't look like that was going to happen today. I mean, Kareem Hunt was actually getting more work than Isaiah Pacheco. So there's something going on with the way they think about matchups or something like that like we're not necessarily privy to. And I can also say around Brashard Smith, he did give you 13.1 fantasy points today, 36% of the snaps, 41% of the rushing attempts, but 87% of his snaps, he had an 87% snap share in the fourth quarter. So most of his work came late in the game with Pacheco as well as Kareem Hunt sitting over on the bench. So with Smith, it really was garbage time whenever he inflated his numbers to get it up to that 36% snap share. Obviously, it looks really good in the passing game, dude. Just another toy that they have to play with, and they design these screens and all this design stuff that they do for him, a very explosive playmaker. So I'm not saying he can't be a stash play like in a deeper league, because we could, injuries happen and all of a sudden you probably have Jerick McKinnon on your hands. Like if that happened and they had to play him like 50% of the snaps, we'd probably like some of the boom performances we would get from Brashard Smith. But don't be confused, to Ian's point with the Hunt injury. Don't take this as, oh my God, they're really increasing Brashard Smith's role. This was due to the injury and the work came in the fourth quarter.
And they were getting Smith some receiving stuff beforehand, but 11 of his 14 carries came in the fourth quarter. I remember actually looking at it at a point where they actually ran Brashard up the middle, and I was like, oh, that's new. That's like a non-gadget touch they got for the guy. But again, afterwards, I was just kind of leaning towards that probably being because Kareem Hunt was out more than anything. So again, guys, the Jerick McKinnon comp is provocative. I do think they can do similar things as a pure receiver, but man, we still have not seen one recorded pass blocking snap from Brashard Smith this season. I mean, Jerick had 76 when he was out there doing his thing. We're seeing Brashard Smith used before this game when, again, he was filling in more in the fourth, nearly equal snaps in terms of playing out wider in the slot versus as running back. So, hey, if they're going to increase that up, and like Dwayne said, if it gets to 50%, then by all means, I am just pretty, thinking that's going to be unlikely. But hey, Chiefs offense doing their thing versus the Washington Commanders at Arrowhead on Monday Night Football next week. Get your popcorn ready for that one. Hopefully Jaden Daniels is good to go. Over to the Las Vegas Raiders. 30, Dwain, 30 total plays for the Raiders. It is a record low in the True Media database going back to 2002 per Nate Tice. Could even be an all-time low depending on how back you want to go in your sources. The Raiders were 0 for 7 on third down. They had 95 total yards of offense, and they had under 18 minutes time of possession. This was just a complete atrocity. I think we can safely say the worst team-wide offensive performance of the season.
Yeah, terrible. I mean, Geno looks like complete trash. And Geno's a guy that you and I have actually, gone to bat for and saying like, look, guys, we don't think he's like an elite player, but he's definitely like an above average quarterback in the NFL, but he hasn't looked that way it doesn't look that way this year. So I don't know. Something's not clicking there. Now they've obviously been without Brock Bowers. It seems like all of their weapons are kind of redundant to each other. Like they're Trey Tucker guys, like had a 35% target share. He did everything he could. Like getting 8.3 PPR points, I guess, is like low key impressive when, Geno threw for 67 yards and then Pickett had to enter the game. So maybe we give a hat tip to Trey Tucker. But yeah, we didn't have Jacoby Myers in this game. So we did see Dante Thornton Jr. step back into a larger role, but who cares? Jack Besh had a 90% or 80% route participation, but also like who cares? And also I will say on Besh so far, like has not been a target earner. It's still way too early, like to call it on a second round pick, but hasn't been doing much with his opportunities to this point. So Michael Mayer, had 85% routes, 12% targets, but you already heard how low the passing yards were and how low the plays are or were this game. So just very tough to score any fantasy points. Obviously the Raiders won't be this bad every week, but like it's hard to have much confidence in their offense.
100%, man. And, maybe we do see Jacoby Myers traded. I will say, guys, like I know the first instinct was like, oh, Jacoby Myers isn't playing. They're just holding him out for a trade. Like they showed him with a knee brace on trying to warm up and get ready for the game. I feel like if they just didn't want him to play, they wouldn't have gone through that whole charade. Of course, I am not a doctor, but we'll see what happens there. Again, Jack Besh would be the guy that we think would take a step forward between him and Thornton without Jacoby. But again, expecting any of these wide receivers outside of Trey Tucker to be anything close to fantasy viable, probably just wishful thinking. The good news is we have, heard that Brock Bowers is eyeing a return following their week 8 bye. So hopefully we can get back and see him do his thing. Otherwise, man, it's really just Genty and Bowers at this point. Obviously, this game was just a lost cause for Genty, only 7 total touches. So final note is just, again, at least Geno, man, when he was having bad games, he was still being aggressive and throwing downfield. That has just completely gone away. I think he's spooked at this point, man. Weeks 1 through 5, he had a 7.9 yard average target depth. That's even a little bit below what we saw in Seattle these last 2 weeks. Dead last in the NFL at 2.8. He's trying to get the ball out to avoid sacks and avoid turnovers, and it has made for some atrocious football to watch. This is rough. Dwain, do you know the Raiders backup quarterback, though? Might be worse.
Oh, man. Is it who? It's not Aiden O'Connell anymore.
I wish it was. I wish it was Aiden O'Connell. I never thought I would say that, but I would take Aiden O'Connell over Kenny Pickett 8 days.
Oh, yeah. Kenny Pickett finished this game. Jesus.
Yeah. So not great there. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, arguably the 4 most haunting words in sports. Here comes Kenny Pickett. We'll see if that is the case after their bye here when they take on the Jaguars. Also, good news though, guys. Max Crosby left with a knee injury that was precautionary per Ian Rappaport. So good news there. It really is, the one thing that Raiders fans can continuously smile about. Moving along, we saw the Eagles take down the Vikings 28-22. Philly covered as 2.5-point road faves. The over cash here at 43.5. A little bit of a wonky game because Philly came out on drive 1, 4th down. Jalen Hurts patient in the pocket, found A.J. Brown after he was able to kind of just get loose there on a long drop back for the touchdown. And then we saw Carson Wentz throw a pick 6. So Eagles jumped out to this quick 14-point lead. Minnesota started marching back though, and things were getting tight. And then really, man, Hurts just continued to take over through the air because Saquon Barkley, unfortunately, only 44 rushing yards on 18 carries. Now averaging, guys, is 3.3 on the year. Only Zach Charbonnet is worse. But hey, when Jalen Hurts is throwing for 326 yards and 3 scores on 19 of 23 passing, Dwain, things are going to be okay there. It's one of these situations where, you did a great job shouting it out where the Eagles were the NFL's most run-heavy offense in the first 3 weeks of the year. And then it become the most pass-heavy offense in terms of drop-back rate over expected sense. My original thought was like, I don't think they want to be the most pass-heavy offense. That also coincided with them losing some of these games. But they really can't run the ball right now, Dwain. And when we got their center, Cam Jurgens, now injuring a knee, I'm not so sure that's going to improve. So for the time being, man, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, wheels up.
Yeah, I mean, today was a balanced game. I mean, just the way it worked out, 23 passing attempts, 23 rushing attempts, but Hurts was just hyper efficient. And the big thing in this game, Ian, is just pushing the ball down the field. I mean, he averaged 14.2 yards per attempt and was really, really looking for Devontae Smith as well as A.J. Brown down the field instead of checking the ball down to Dallas Goedert. Goedert only had three targets, 3 receptions for 18 yards today. But we had Devontae Smith, man, 33.3 PPR points. He had 100% route participation. They're just like, nah, we're not coming off the field. 48% target share for the Alabama superstar. 173 air yards on the day for Devontae Smith. So that is a lot on an Eagles team that we haven't seen anything like that really from this year. We have seen it in the past. And then we had A.J. Brown. He didn't have as many targets, but still had a 26% target share. Also never left the field, 100% route participation. He had 109 air yards on his way to 28.1 PPR points, thanks to 2 receiving touchdowns. So, yeah, good sign for the Eagles offense as far as the passing game goes. Not so much for the running game. Like you mentioned, lost another offensive lineman. They've been very banged up. So, I think at a minimum, they just have to stay more balanced and potentially pass balanced until they get things going. I will say this, like, I get it, guys. Barkley's been absolutely terrible, but like, do we really believe Barkley just suddenly sucks versus what we saw last year? And like, this is what he's going to be the rest of the year. Like, I still have a very hard time wrapping my mind around that, around a team that we still overall like, Ian. The Eagles are 5-2. Like, this is a winning team. They typically are going to be in game scripts that are going to be favorable to Barkley. So I know it's 7 weeks of hell that we've dealt with. And so if you drafted Barkley, I know it really sucks, but man, I still don't believe that it's going to be this bad. He's obviously not going to be what he was last year. Like, that's out the window at this point. Yeah. But could he get hot and be more like that back at some point? I don't know, man. I still think that he can. I refuse to believe that like he suddenly just is this terrible.
Last season, Barkley had 17 carries that gained at least 20 yards. This year, Saquon has 113 carries without a 20-plus yard gain. That said, Dwain, he does not lead the NFL in that stat. Christian McCaffrey does. Christian McCaffrey hasn't done a darn thing on the ground this year until he did tonight. So I am with you. I do not think Saquon magically got bad. And honestly, as we were kind of bringing up earlier, I forget what player. Oh, it was Alvin Kamara. When we have seen Saquon flash, it's been as a receiver when they've gotten him out there in open space. Again, this offensive line, I think, has been the bigger problem. They've been banged up and far less dominant. You can see the numbers in terms of their RB rush yards before contact, a group that was always at the top of the league in previous years with Jalen Hurts. And again, the awesome group of big uglies, now much more middle of the pack. I believe they were 16th going into this week. So should be better days ahead because they certainly can't get much worse at this point. Again, seeing Saquon Barkley next to Zach Charbonnet and a freaking rushing efficiency metric, Dwayne, it makes me sad, man.
Yeah, like you do the great tables, the scatter plots every week. And when I see where Barkley is on there, it makes me sad every time. And Uncle Ted in the chat, thank you guys for those of you in here hanging out with us. And we love all the questions and the comments. And, he mentioned, hey, the 300 carries from last year shows. Here's my problem with that. Saquon Barkley, okay, look at all the carries he had going into the playoffs. And he still ripped it. So suddenly now he had an off season to get better and now he sucks. Like, I don't know, man. I don't buy that stuff. I think there's just like, it's so rare for backs to get that many carries. And so we've got such a small sample size to compare to historically. I know there's been injuries and the guys weren't as good the next season, but I just really don't believe in that sort of thing. Like, because if it was truly the carries and the workload, you would be like, oh man, he's going to just suck in the Super Bowl or he's going to suck in the NFC Championship game. Like, he literally is fresh off of all those carries he's been dealing with. I think it's the offensive line.
And guys, like the big study that people that do believe that to be the problem that they hang their hat on is the curse of 370 touches. Bijan Robinson had 365 touches last year. All right. Yeah. I think we can agree Bijan still looks pretty good out there. So again, auxiliary factors to me, bigger issue. And just again, even if Saquon is at 90% of himself, which, okay, I guess I could maybe wrap my mind around something like that going on. The production isn't 90% of what it was. It's way worse than that, man. We are looking at sub-giant level efficiency right now. Yeah. Something more going on than just Saquon out there. So can only hope things will be better. They get the Giants next week. We obviously saw, last week that it wasn't exactly a smash spot for them. them. But I will say that Giants defense now, Brian Burns was in a boot after the game. Abdul Carter was a late addition to the injury report. They had a couple secondary injuries as well. I do think at home against that Giants team, hopefully we finally get that true revenge game boom that Saquon, was hoping for a few short weeks ago. So I think we're pretty good on the Eagles, Dwayne. We did see A.J. Dillon inactive. Tank Bigsby actually got his first little run. That said, it was still Will Shipley. It's confusing, man, who to know is going to be that handcuff. I would think Shipley, now that it seems like he's gotten healthier after being a little bit more banged up, but I don't feel wonderful about it.
No, I did take note of that as well. So I do think that Bigsby's a better player than A.J. Dillon. So it's hard to say exactly what would happen, but if something did happen with Saquon and he had to miss time, I will just say this. I would be far more excited if it was Tank Bigsby they told me was going to handle the most of the workload versus A.J. Dillon. I would struggle to get very hyped for A.J. Dillon.
I think it'd be kind of split, though, between Shipley and Bigsby in an offense that will still give it to Hurts by the 1 yard line and doesn't throw the ball to their running backs. Again, neither of those guys are exactly going to be Saquon Barkley. Over with the Vikings, we got one more game at least of the Carson Wentz experience wound up. Speaking of guys that put up numbers, while down multiple touchdowns, Wentz got to 313 yards again, did throw 2 interceptions, and golly, were they atrocious ones. I thought we were looking at like an all-time spiral into a dumpster fire to start this game. To Wentz's credit, he did get going a little bit there in the second half and, did a little bit better showing for himself. Got Jordan Addison, Dwayne, 128 yards on 9 catches. He has now had 114 yards, 41 yards and a touchdown, and again, those 128 yards today. Look, I fully believe Addison is a great NFL wide receiver. I do not think he's going to keep up his pace, though, as the wide receiver 8 in fantasy. Again, a situation where he's really benefited from almost like last year Quentin Johnston sort of vibes. Just, again, small sample, but we're looking at a guy with 18 catches. And I swear, Dwayne, on 4 of those, there's been no defender within 20 yards of the guy. So I'm worried that once Carson Wentz is finally out of the picture, J.J. McCarthy comes back in, we get more of a run-first offense, and that's just going to squeeze things for everyone not named Justin Jefferson. How do you feel?
Yeah, no, I want Carson Wentz under center. The challenge is he threw the 2 picks today. And, that's the thing that will get coaching staffs to move on from you. But I have no doubt that Carson Wentz is the better option for Addison, for Justin Jefferson, until obviously JJ McCarthy, we're not writing him off. He could turn things around and get better. But if I had to pick right now, I want it to be Wentz. I will say with Addison, the one thing, and I agree with everything that you just said, but he's also a player that you and I have spent a lot of time watching, and he just cooks a lot of people anyway, so yeah. I get it. There have been some of these busted coverages and things like that, but all we can do is look at the 4 games he's been back: 15.4, 15.1, 21.8 PPR points in those games. Now, in the other 2 games, it was more of the role we had seen last year: 18, 19% target shares in those 2 games. Today, he popped up with a 30% target share and 182 air yards. But to your point, in a game with J.J. McCarthy, so 2 of these last 3 games, we've had over 100 air yards for Addison. He had 114 in week 4, 182 this week. Man, I'm hard-pressed to believe we'll see many air yard games like that if we get J.J. McCarthy back under center. And that's really where Addison thrives, is coming through on the big plays and having a quarterback that can find him when things bust and when they break loose, which isn't always right at the snap. Sometimes you got to be willing to hold the ball a little bit. So that does definitely worry me. It worries me for Justin Jefferson, too. He had 12.9 PPR points today, but he still had 10 targets, 25% target share. Justin Jefferson's out here doing his thing. He's great as long as we have Wentz. But if we do get J.J. McCarthy back, even the great Justin Jefferson takes a hit.
Could have had a bigger day for Jefferson. Had a 6-yard potential fade touchdown in his hands. Great play by Cooper DeJean, though, to knock that out at the last second. But yeah, man, I guess it's just going to be tougher on everyone involved in the passing game. It's small sample sizes all around here, but in those first 2 weeks of the season, Vikings were the league's second most run-heavy offense in terms of dropback rate over expected. They've been the second most pass-happy offense ever since Wentz did take over there. So stay tuned on that. As always, we'll continue to get those practice updates and let you know throughout the week here on the Fantasy Life Show. Only other part, Dwayne, quick shout out to TJ Hawkinson, 43 yards, caught 6 of 9 targets. Again, not like we're ranking him as a top 6 guy, but man, he almost has 6 diving touchdown in the end zone. For my money's worth, I thought he actually controlled it enough, not in the opinion of the old Zebras out there in Minnesota, though. So unfortunate there for Hawkinson. Really, last point for him would be this rushing game that could have Aaron Jones back as early as next week. We haven't heard anything definitive. It is a running back over 30 years old dealing with a hamstring, so we can't just assume he's going to be ready to go. The second he is, eligible to get off the IR and have his practice window end and all that. But Jordan Mason, man, still someone that is leading the backfield. Maybe a little bit too much Xavier Scott, but end of the day, man, 76% snaps for Jordan Mason, hard to complain about. They're facing the Chargers on Thursday Night Football. Maybe that is going to be a quick turnaround for Aaron Jones. So in that case, probably another week for Jordan Mason being a top 20 back.
I mean, we'll see. When we have these guys like Aaron Jones that have been out all this time, we don't know for sure about their conditioning. But if he's in shape, like he'll probably play on Thursday. The quick turnaround when you
for him. That's a good point.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I mean, if he had got hurt this weekend, but I do think that when we get Aaron Jones back, I think Jordan Mason will remain the lead ball carrier. I think he's going to be the early down guy. I mean, honestly, the Vikings already showed us that in the first couple of games. So I think we will see more, of Aaron Jones than we've seen of Xavier Scott, though. Like my guess is you're probably looking at like a 55% to 60% snap share for Jordan Mason. And then you got Aaron Jones taking over the rest. And then you could have the hot hand thing happen. Like if Aaron Jones gets really hot, like you could get a game where you're going to see him more. But I expect Aaron Jones to come in and take over the pass down where probably about 40% of the rushing attempts would be. That's about where I would project him whenever he comes back.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to find this. I'm not sure the credibility of VikingsTerritory.com, Dwain, but a source told Vikings Territory that Jones is 100% ready to go. Could have played this weekend, but is on IR. So barring anything unexpected, expect his activation on Monday or Tuesday. Simple as that. So if that ends up not being true, please direct your complaints to Vikings Territory or, send them some compliments if they are right. So just something to keep in mind there. Again, we'll continue to keep you guys updated throughout the week. Think that about does it for that one, Dwain, so we can move on to the Carolina Panthers winning again, going up to 4-3 on the year with a 13-6 victory over the Jets. Carolina was 1.5-point dogs in this one, so kudos to them for shocking the nation. Under 40 did cash here in this one. Bryce Young, another middling performance, good throw here and there, but again, just leaving a bit to be desired. Ended up leaving early with a sprained ankle. I know. I'm just trying to be nice.
5.5 yards per attempt. Come on, Bryce. Jesus, dude.
No.
Killing us.
Not great. Andy Dalton could be under center next week, but it's against the Bills, man. So it's Tedderell McMillan and everyone else. T-Mac didn't have a very good game here, was getting the Sauce Gardner shadow treatment throughout. Just 1 week removed from him having nice 2 touchdowns. We talked about the targets all year long. Honestly, Dwayne, I was just surprised to see Xavier Lee get, having the performance he did, caught 9 of 11 targets, 492 yards in the score. Again, I'm more so inclined to think that this was the Sauce Gardner effect more than anything. So at least for another week, it's going to be T-Mac and everyone else. Unfortunately, that includes Jalen Coker. Dwayne, they couldn't get my man 1 catch. Come on.
Yeah. 24.2 fantasy points for Leggett. So like you in 36% target share. So like we always pay attention, but to your point, like for his career, that's not who Leggett has been really in any games. This was the best game that we've seen from Leggett. So, I mean, we pay attention, not going to go crazy with it. He probably will be in a lot of waiver wire columns, but to Ian's point, this is not a great offense. We're not suddenly, even with Andy Dalton, like we'll feel a little better than what we feel about with Bryce Young, but it's not like it's an offense that can support all these guys. To your point on Jalen Coker, 47% route participation. So we're still working back through the quad injury, but also, we've just kind of had Jimmy Horn Jr. has emerged really kind of as a playmaker, Ian. So he had 22% route participation. So this could be more of a rotation than what people think. We didn't even have Hunter Renfrow active for this game. He was a healthy scratch with Coker returning to the lineup. But Horn is a guy that they do like to move around the formation. They like to try to get him some of these design looks. He's got some speed to stretch the field. So we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on it. But it's hard to get too excited about the number 2 or 3 option on an offense like this. And the tight end rotation was just a 3-way rotation. It was super gross. Everybody was out there.
Again, we'll see what happens with Bryce Young. X-rays were negative on his ankle for what that's worth. We'll find out if he is ready to go ahead of next weekend against the Bills. The one group that we have been able to rely on, Dwain, or at least could there for a minute, was Rico Dowdle in this backfield. Sure, it seemed like, though, that we saw things really end up going 50-50 between him and Chuba Hubbard. Is that what you saw from the utilization?
Yeah, so I don't want to gross everybody out completely, but Chuba Hubbard took over the Zach Charbonnet role, and Rico Dowdle played the role of KW3. So Chuba Hubbard, 14 carries for 31 yards, and a Charbonnet 2.2 yards per carry performance. But he had 54% of the snaps versus 46% for Dowdle, so a slight lead there. Dowdle led the way in carries, like we see for KW3 sometimes, 53% to 44%. But Chuba Hubbard was their primary pass catcher, 47% route participation, like Charbonnet gets, 100% of the snaps inside the 5-yard line. Gross, like Charbonnet gets, and a 10% target share. Only a 25% route participation rate for Rico Dowdle. Clearly looked like the better player again today with 4.6 yards per carry versus that 2.2 that we talked about. Even on his one catch, got 17 yards out of it, Ian. So 10.6 PPR points for the great Rico Dowdle. The 30 points per game run is over. Chuba Hubbard gave you 7.5. So look, an offense we're not that crazy about, and they're going to probably keep splitting time like this. I mean, for Chuba Hubbard to get 54% versus 46% after what he had been doing, and they're trying to, quote unquote, maybe potentially ease Chuba Hubbard back into action. I mean, that's just not a very good sign. So I think they're both. Rico Dowdle's a running back 3. Chuba Hubbard's a running back 4.
And if we've learned anything, it's that winning football teams, which the Panthers are right now, which the Seahawks are right now, they're not going to be in a hurry to change this stuff, Dwayne. I don't think the Panthers are looking at their stats going, well, Rico's averaging 5.6 yards per carry this year, and Chuba's averaging 3.7. I think they have very fond memories of Chuba because Chuba's been very good at them, and Chuba's a leader on that team, and they paid him, and he's obviously a still great football player in his own right. But man, Rico Dowdle has literally been one of the best running backs in the league this year. He's averaging an NFL best 5.6 yards per carry. Yes, maybe the sample isn't quite as big as some other dudes, but just unfortunate. So this week against the Bills, Dwayne, it sounds like that we're going to be ranking them just like we do the Seahawks running backs on that RB2 borderline, maybe in the top 24 if there's enough teams on bye, but unfortunately, not exactly, set it and forget it options.
Yeah. No, like I said, Rico Dowdle running back 3, he gives you upside. Chuba Hubbard, I think, is in the running back 4, maybe low end running back 3 conversation. Again, just not an offense, dude, that we like enough. Now they've been good on the ground. Their offensive line's done some nice things. Now I think Robert Hunt actually got hurt today, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Their starting guard, they have a pretty good offensive line, so that's something for us to monitor. But even though we like their ground game, like it's still an offense, and it's not a great defense. They can get into a lot of crappy situations, and so game script's going to definitely be a factor as well for these backs. So it's Dowdle's playing great. Obviously, if you got him, you're keeping him on your roster. You're keeping Chuba Hubbard's stash, but we just don't have the confidence now that they're going to be splitting the role.
Meanwhile, for those Jets, Justin Fields threw for 46 yards in the first half, chipped in 22 yards on the ground, also took 3 sacks, and then got unceremoniously benched by Aaron Glenn, who said the Jets needed the spark. He did not name a quarterback for Week 8. So, look,
Geno Smith, hold my beer, is what Justin Fields said.
I will say, this was kind of my point a couple weeks ago. If you need 200 passing yards, I agree. Tyrod Taylor gives you a better chance of getting there. But I'm watching Tyrod Taylor, Dwayne, and I go, oh, man, look, he had Allen Lazard, probably could have thrown a 40-yard touchdown. Oh, look at the next play. There's Josh Reynolds open. And I'm going, Allen Lazard and Josh Reynolds, that's who Tyrod Taylor is working with right now. So, yeah, he threw 2 picks. He averaged, he nearly doubled up Justin Fields, averaged 5.7 yards per attempt versus 3.8. Put any quarterback in there that is not a overly good quarterback, and they're going to suck in this offense, Dwayne. Right now, we have 2 bad quarterbacks in a sucky offense. That's what the Jets are.
Yeah, that's what we have. And Justin Fields, like we've talked about it so many times, man. Like the ceiling is massive, and the floor is like, through like, I don't know. Like you have to dig a hole way really deep to get to the floor of Justin Fields. And so it's hard to find the in-between stuff. like you get these 24, 27 fantasy point games, and then you get a complete turd like today. It's just the Justin Fields experience. We've been living it for a long time now.
I just don't even know what Aaron Glenn's doing out here with his halftime management, just refusing to even do Hail Marys and stuff like that. Clearly it's pissing off Garrett Wilson. The rest of the team just seems like he's trying to throw stuff at the wall, praying that they get a spark. Unfortunately, they didn't get one from Breece Hall and company on the ground either. Panthers run defense has been a very big strength of the team this year. Obviously, Breece Hall has had better plays. He also did miss some time actually about the end of the first half, did return, but really did seem to be pretty evenly split up, Dwayne, between him and Isaiah Davis. Don't love seeing that.
Yeah, still the rushing attempts, though, 69% to Breece Hall. So basically the same thing we've seen since Braylon Allen left. Snaps pretty close, more of the passing down work going to Isaiah Davis, but the majority of the work on the ground going to Breece Hall.
Like this team is just freaking. Tyler Johnson's out here leading the team in receiving. It's just, it's a mess. Mason Taylor
passed an overbet, so that's all barely by like a yard and a half.
Jets are facing the Bengals. We'll see. Now that we know Fields can be benched, man, you can't start him with any problems, even if he does
We have to
somehow
move him
get the
down
job
now.
back. 100%. Brees Hall is going to be the only recommended start in this offense until Garrett Wilson hopefully returns, I believe, following their week 9 bye. So Sauce Gardner did get a concussion in this one, so obviously could be a nice boom for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in that matchup. Otherwise, guys, let's go ahead and move on to the late afternoon slate. We had the Colts beat down the Chargers 38-24. This game was actually 38-17 at the start of the fourth quarter. Colts obviously covered outright and won as 2.5-point dogs. The over cash of 48.5. Another just great performance from Daniel Jones, Dwain. I was wondering if he was going to maybe start turning back into a pumpkin. If you looked at his yards per attempt, they had gone down each and every week since week 1. But man, today went back out there and did his thing, averaged 8.5 yards per attempt, 288 and 2 scores through the air. Nice connections deep to Alec Pierce, had 98 yards in a day. Tyler Warren continuing to look wide open and then just routing. Like, he's just so freaking good, man. Can we see a game where Tyler Warren again, like, plays USC again and gets 17 targets? Like, I've never seen a group look like they're capable of slowing the dude down. He's just like not officially involved a ton, but you know what? I'm not going to criticize him because Michael Pittman's scoring and doing his thing. And when all fails, Dwayne, just give the rock to Jonathan Taylor and he's going to go rip off some big runs. He now has 3 games in the last month with 3 rushing touchdowns. JT looking like one of, if not the very best fantasy picks in our entire freaking game. Now has 697 rushing yards. That is the most in the NFL by over 100. So great stuff there. I think really our only question here, Dwayne, is what did we see from the wide receiver rotation with Josh Downs out?
Yeah, it was just Anthony Gould took over the wide receiver 3 role, not Adonai Mitchell. AD Mitchell is so in the doghouse. Like, there's a doghouse inside the doghouse that's inside another doghouse, and that's where he's living right now. And that was with Downs and Ashton Dulin out. Like, he was still the wide receiver 4. So AD Mitchell, you just officially pissed off the coaches too many times. And look, I mean, Shane Steichen's got a great thing going here. I think he's trying to send a message, and, it's just another message he's sending that they're going to execute. You're not going to do silly things like drop the ball before you cross the goal line. That could have been a touchdown. So it is what it is at this point. But yeah, man, Colts look absolutely fantastic. I don't really have anything to add. Everything looks the same. It's all, I will say, it was a big day for Alec Pierce. 10 targets, 5 receptions for 98 yards, 19.6 yards per catch. So still, though, on the year, he's sitting at a 13% target share, but he does lead the team in air yards at 32%. So he is a deep play threat. And to your point on the Daniel Jones thing, what's nice is to see Daniel Jones just be willing to let it rip multiple times like that to a guy down the field if that's what the coverage is giving him. And he did that today, and Pierce did make them pay.
Dude, we're going to see Pierce. He's going to surprise some people with the contract he's going to get in free agency, I think, this March, man. We saw Darius Slayton get $36 million. Josh Palmer got, $33 million from the Bills. I could see Pierce definitely getting that, if not even a little more. He really has been awesome these past 2 seasons. So good stuff from the Colts. Again, I mean, their schedule wasn't the strongest. They had that week 2 win over the Broncos. The way they really just took belt to ass, man, against the Chargers today. This was really impressive.
Yeah,
6-1,
when we
looking
talked,
very real.
Yeah, I just couldn't believe this line was this low with all the injuries the Chargers are dealing with on their offensive line. I even though it was it was at the Chargers stadium, I was just like, man, I don't understand how that line was like 1.5. Like, the Chargers are just a much better football team. I mean, the Colts are just a much better football team, especially right now. Like, once the Chargers are fully healthy, obviously they can't ever get Rashawn Slater back this season. Once you get Joe Alt back, you get things rolling again. They've obviously got a lot of weapons. They've got a good quarterback. But at this point in the season, man, the Colts have just shown so much more. I was really surprised by that line.
Expect the good times to keep on rolling next week against the Titans. The only thing I could have wondered, Dwayne, for why the line was that close, because the Colts secondary has been a mix of bad and also injured. And we did see that come to fruition at least a little bit with Justin Herbert throwing for a career high 420 yards, although it did take 55 attempts to get there. 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. One of them was tipping the line. The other one was admittedly a very bad end zone pick that he should not have thrown. Took 3 sacks on the day and was under a lot of pressure, as he really has been all year without his tackles for large portions of the time. So end the day, though, man, NFL high 1,913 passing yards. It really does seem like the Chargers realize that they can't run the football and accordingly are trusting Herbert to throw to everyone involved. So unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be getting 55 pass attempts week in and week out, Dwayne, but here we are through 7 weeks now, man. Quentin Johnson is the wide receiver 10 on the season in PPR points per game, caught another touchdown today. Keenan Allen, 119 yards and a touchdown, caught 11 passes. He's the wide receiver 11. Lavin Conkey's further down, but again, with 9 catches catches for 67 yards today. He has been playing much better lately and is moving up the list. Also had a few near miss opportunities out there. So yeah, man, Justin Herbert and these wide receivers, loving them. Maybe can't have all three go off every single week, but all in all, man, if you have any of these guys, you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, you're feeling good about it. And then now we have a Rondé Gadsden the second. Like, he's now emerging. Yeah. Well, it's like, dude, like it's going to be really hard for everybody to go off now that he is actually turning into what he has shown. So if you look at a Rondé Gadsden, I know he was the sicko start this week, mainly because like, man, if he hit big this weekend, we were like, he's probably of all, even though we had all these other tight end options that, you know, looked really good for this week, he was arguably the one that like looked good rest of season because he had already really wrestled this role away. And here are his route participation rates along with his fantasy points per game over the last 3 games, Ian. So week 5, he jumped up to 64%. He only gave you 2.4 fantasy points. Last week, 77% route participation with 11.8 fantasy points. This week, kept that 77%. So almost at that 80% mark that we're really looking for. He's right there at it. 29.4 fantasy points for Rondé Gadsden. He had 9 targets, 7 catches, 164 freaking yards, and a touchdown. Like you mentioned, 420 yards. Justin Herbert had to freaking fling the rock 55 times, guys. So the pie's going to shrink, but it's still a pass first offense. Like, I mean, drop back rate over expected. This is one of the teams that's going to lead the way the rest of the season. So it's still a pass happy offense, and you can run into games like this. Someone's going to be getting squeezed, but man, Gadsden's now in here saying, you're not squeezing me. Like, I'm going to be part of this too. So it's great if you have Gadsden. If you have the other guys, it's like, dang, man, now we have this other mouth to feed. Like, we were already worried, like, one of the guys gets squeezed every week. Well, now we could be thinking about 4 guys we're trying to start and 2 of them are getting squeezed. Obviously this week they were all fine, but it's going to be tough for that to happen every week. But regardless, you're happy with all these players on your team. And apparently they love Trey Harris too. Like, that's all the coach speak. He's just not getting out there enough.
Third most pass happy offense in terms of drop back rate over expected. So they're leaning into as much as we could realistically want them to. But again, there's only so much you can do with one football to go around in the year 2025. But can't say enough good things about Gadsden. And again, last week, we were obviously talking about the big uptick in usage and saying that if you need a tight end long term, he should be your guy. Going to be much more aggressive and hard to get him on the waiver wires this week if you did not manage to do so. Then can't say enough just how good he looks out there, Dwayne. Like, we've seen tight ends before. Like, not to hate on Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert's been a very good tight end, but we know it, okay? They've been engineering looks for him on the 5-yard line. Those numbers weren't exactly reflecting him being just this, man among child that fantasy points said. Gadsden, dude, that 53-yard catch and run, for him to like run a wheel route, draw a defensive hold, play through that, make a nice catch with his hands, and then break like another tackle to reverse field as a tight end who's bigger than everyone else out there. Like, this dude looks freaking awesome, man. Like, rest of the season, top 10 tight end. Can we say that already? In top 10, now that I say it out loud, maybe that's low.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a low end tight end 1 because there's going to be the boom bust to his nature, but I think he's in the top 12. And he was rostered in 1 or 2% of Yahoo leagues whenever we talked about him on the rankings show this week. So hopefully some of you guys got to pick him up after listening to the show. Maybe you read the sicko start. But yeah, I think he's in the top 12. And I think where it really gets interesting for Gadsden, knock on wood, we don't want anything like this to happen. But you know how injuries are, Ian. Like, I mean, and the Chargers definitely know how injuries are. Like, they've dealt with so many. But, man, at any point, if one of these other wide receivers misses time, like, I think Gadsden by far is the guy that benefits the most. As much as we like Trey Harris, and I know he would get on the field more, Gadsden's just already earned the trust of Justin Herbert.
Last thing, Dwayne, again, this was a game where the Colts really got out to a big lead and kept it. So we really did seem to have a similar role for Kamani Vidal as last week. Just unfortunately, they were throwing the ball more. Yeah.
I mean, and we talked about the efficiency last week, and you mentioned, hey, won't get to play Miami every week. That was very true. He averaged 2.2 yards per carry today. So it was some tough sledding for Vidal, but to your point, it was still the same role. He had 7.5 PPR points, but 65% of the snaps, 53% route participation. He had a 9% target share. So Haskins had 32% of the snaps, 31% of the routes. So definitely a situation where it is still Vidal as their clear-cut running back 1 through the 2 games that we have seen, and probably won't have Omarion Hampton for another 4 weeks. once you include the bye week in there, potentially 5. Like, we don't know for sure on Amari and Hampton. So Vidal is someone you definitely want to keep on your roster, guys. I know he didn't do great, and sometimes it's a bitter kind of taste in your mouth whenever you're like, oh, I'm going to plug this guy in. They don't give you fantasy points. Like, he has the role. Like, this is Vidal's role, and it's in an offense that we still like. We know they're pass happy, but he's out there running the routes, like, and he's a capable receiver as well. So I still think that Vidal's right there at that borderline running back 2 territory, Ian, probably a little higher this week because we have 6 teams on bye.
Again, facing off against the Vikings on Thursday Night Football. They have been had by a handful of running backs this year. Obviously not Saquon today, but certainly a group that is so good against the pass. Teams have sometimes found more success on the ground. Let's move on to our Xfinity Game of the Week, brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy. Xfinity, imagine that. The Broncos came back in a wild fourth quarter to take down the Giants 33-32. Credit to Jackson Dart and Company for covering as 8-point dogs. The over cash with ease, eventually at 40.5 points. Again, the Giants were up 19-0 at the start of the fourth. The win probability chart looked like one of the best roller coasters you could find up at Cedar Point. Again, just crazy, man. 33 points in the fourth quarter by the Broncos. That is the most by any team that have been shut out in the first 3 quarters in NFL history. So, just again, I'm not going to go through every single drive there at the end, but seeing like Bo Nix and company go ahead and reclaim the lead, and then all of a sudden, just in my opinion, really bad DPI call, dropped an interception by the Broncos. Jackson Dart reclaims it. And then just when you think that they actually had it, Bo Nix with a couple clutch completions to Mims and Sutton down the stretch. Just what a freaking game, Dwayne.
Yeah, dude. Like, I was just sitting there on the edge of my seat. I got up because I'm usually over here doing all my notes, and I went over and sat in my chair, and I was just glued in. I just had that game on for the end, and it was fantastic. Bo Nix, man, 39.9 fantasy points today. You know how I do the Xfinity best projection, tweet every Saturday. Yeah. And I'd put Bo Nix already on there. And so I was like, I'm just gonna leave the quarterbacks off, but like, he was the name, he was like the 8th highest. And I was like, I should have put him on there. It's just the dual threat, ability that he has. Ian, he came through with the 2 rushing touchdowns today on top of what he did as a passer, which was 2 passing touchdowns. 5.6 yards per attempt, like, was still crappy. Like, it came on the volume, you know what I mean? But when you have the ability to really do both things, and we hadn't seen as much of it from him as a rusher this year as what we saw last year. And part of that's because they upgraded their running back room. So you don't need him to handle as much of that workload. And, but it came through today, man, in a big way. So he's now averaging 19.6 fantasy points per game with 223 passing yards per game. And the big thing is, even though his yards per attempt are down, like 1.6 passing touchdowns per game. So he's still over that 1.5 mark. So he's throwing the touchdowns, and he's now averaging 24.6 rushing yards per game. And this is the big one. He's averaging almost a half a rushing touchdown per game. He's at 0.43 per contest. So he is deciding whenever he needs to, and he wants to take off. And we saw that today. So it's in his bag of tricks. And that is the main thing with these quarterbacks that give you, and we're not saying he's like this elite dual threat guy, but like, he's above average when it comes to his ability as a rusher. And if he continues to score touchdowns, and it won't be quite at that rate, guys, like, that's going to come down. But even if he's like at a touchdown rushing every 3rd game, like, it's just really valuable in fantasy. Now, obviously this was a big game script that pushed him into this because the Broncos have been a more balanced team this year.
And look, Broncos, they have dropped the 3rd most passes in the NFL, and the Jaguars and the Browns have more. And to Bo Nix's credit, man, like, there's something to be said about some quarterbacks fade away, and when the lights are shining bright, it's like Bo Nix, some of the big throws he made in this game, again, to Sutton, to Mims, and the Eagles game down the stretch as well. Like, he has just, again, big time throws in the biggest moments, and that does matter. But yeah, man, other than the Bengals game, I believe that's the only time he's averaged north of 7 yards per attempt all year long. So just like to see more down and down consistency. That said, outside of Cortland Sutton, who exactly is putting any sort of fear into opposing defenses out here? It seemed like they wanted to try to get Marvin Mims going a little bit more early with a couple deep shots and screens, and he certainly performed well enough for himself, catching 6 of 7 targets for 85 yards. Troy Franklin was really the one who couldn't get too much going. 154 unrealized air yards, tied for the 2nd most on the week. The one touchdown he did catch happened to get tipped and then landed between like 3 defenders in the back of the end zone. So got a little bit lucky with that one. But again, Cortland Sutton doing his thing and just making great plays. So win is a win is a win. The Broncos have 5 of them this year. Just, hey, I would say this, man. Bo Nix is not playing his best football, and the Broncos are 5-2. Okay, so feel good about that, Denver fans. Pretty much same old in the backfield. Dwain just didn't, unfortunately, get a touchdown from Mr. J.K. Dobbins.
Yeah, he had 50% of the snaps, 61% of the rushing attempts. And then you got Harvey coming in to take over part of the passing downs. And the passing downs he doesn't get, we give to Tyler Bidet. So, you got to do it. You got to have a three-way rotation in. Those are the rules. So essentially you have J.K. Dobbins getting half the backfield, and then you have the other two backs splitting the rest. I will say on Evan Ingram, and this is probably game script, but a season high 69% route participation. So just something for us to keep an eye on, because it's been well below that, guys, that we wanted around 80%. I don't know that we'll get there. The Broncos seem to like this three-way tight end rotation they have going, but the targets per route run have been there for Evan Ingram all year. He just hasn't had the routes, and he's also a player that we've seen over the last 3 to 4 seasons be pretty good. So keep an eye on Mr. Evan Ingram.
Last 4 games, 7, 6, 6, and now 8 targets. Just, hasn't gained 45 yards in a game yet. So it would be a lot cooler if Ingram made a little bit more out of those. But yeah, man, still does seem like a situation where no one really has stepped up and been that number 2 pass game option you're looking for. Maybe Ingram can be that guy. So unfortunate Dobbins didn't put forward a bigger boom in a spot that, again, featured Denver sitting pretty as touchdown home favorites. But as we explained, didn't exactly get that, overly positive game script that we were hoping for. So next week, though, Dwain, Broncos at home against the Cowboys defense. Gotta feel excited there about Sutton, Dobbins, Bo Nix and company putting together some more fantasy points in that one. Meanwhile, for those New York Football Giants, Jackson Dart, man, look, the rushing touchdown was great. Did he get a little bit lucky here and there? The tip touchdown to Theo, Johnson, just the wide open blown coverage of Daniel Bellinger. Sure, man. But man, even take away those, which is silly because he helped avoid some sacks on one. Even take them away. Jackson Dart threw for over 200 yards in Mile High against this Broncos defense that we have seen do so much worse than so many other quarterbacks. He still chipped in the rushing. He just looks the part, man. So again, mentioned kind of the hilarious go-ahead drive. It wasn't a flawless performance. He's also making his 4th NFL start with Wan'Dale Robinson as the only wide receiver that defense can give a damn about. I believe in Jackson Dart, Dwayne.
I do too. I think Jackson Dart's going to be a star. Like you mentioned, 4 games in, 3 of the games he has not had his top option. Look, Wan'Dale Robinson as your top target, as your top player, and you average 21.9 fantasy points per game over your 4 starts. There's not really anything anybody can say. 198 passing yards per game, but he doesn't have any weapons, 1.75 passing touchdowns per game. That's freaking great. 8.9 rushing attempts per game, 44.5 rushing yards per game, 0.75 rushing touchdowns per game. It's just hard to not score fantasy points whenever you're doing the things that he's doing, even though he's not throwing these huge numbers passing. But today we saw that it can still be in his bag against the best pass defense in the league, man. 284 yards today, to your point. Yes, did he get lucky? Did some things break his way? For sure. But 8.6 yards per attempt with 3 passing touchdowns. Now, he's got to protect the ball. He can't throw that interception that he threw at the end of the game, but he's a young player, man. 28.4 fantasy points against the freaking Denver Broncos. This guy, I don't know. He's got it. Moxie, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, man, but he is playing fantastic. And for fantasy, he just does the things that we want. He has the upside as a rusher. He's not quite to the, Lamar Jackson level, but he's on the tier right below that, kind of in the same range, as where Josh Allen is as far as rushing yards per game. Josh Allen obviously is bigger and can get more touchdowns down inside the 5, but man, this dude's scoring rushing touchdowns almost every single week. So I don't know what else people want. It's kind of funny. Some people seem torn on him on Twitter, and I'm just all I know is 21.9 points per game through 4 games, and he does the things we love in fantasy. So
Twitter is so obsessed with being able to quote tweet something you said 4 months ago that people refuse to actually watch the games and just come up with new opinions, Dwayne. So that's my, this victory lap culture is just poisoning minds all over, continental America, but not here on the Fantasy Life Show. Jackson Dart, someone who I think we liked from the beginning.
Jackson Start. That's his new name, is Jackson Start. I think you just did it. You came up with Jawan Jesus, and now you've done it again, Hartitz, with Jackson Start.
Once we get past 1 a.m., all the good nicknames start coming out. Mr. Dwain. So next week, going up against the Eagles, who, again, I mentioned, I do think we saw Dart do great things in that last matchup. And now with, again, the injury to Burns, having Carter banged up, Paulson Adebo and Javon Holland are also banged up at this point. I do think we could potentially see a fun back and forth shootout in that one. If Jalen Carter is going to be playing, that could complicate things a little bit. But man, Dwayne, especially with those bye weeks, it's going to be really tough to keep Dart out of the top 12. I still had him as, I think, QB 13 this week. And I will admit, this morning, morning, answering yes, like for Jackson Dart over some of the, more stationary pocket passers. Like I felt queasy about it, but after this performance, man, I'm not going to be feeling as queasy.
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of been the Jackson Dart bull like of our team, but I had him lower than you this week, so I guess you get the new mantle as the true Jackson Start believer because I think I had him at 15 or 16 this week, just in this matchup, and there were some other guys that I liked, but overall, like if you look at our rest of season projections, guys, on the site, which you can check out over at fantasylife.com, like Jackson Start was sitting right there at QB 13 the rest of the way, and like he's going to get another little bump in projections again this week after this game.
So again, in Philly, it's not a layup of a matchup, fine.
No.
But after that, man, 49ers, Bears, a great Packers defense, and maybe not as great as we thought. Banged up Lions, like Patriots, like we can get some nice run here. So Jackson Dart very much looking like a QB1 the rest of the way. I said Cam Scatterb was still an RB1 the rest of the way as well, Dwain. I mean, for his money's worth, 16.8 PPR points per game. That is good for RB10 status just behind Jahmyr Gibbs. We did see Tyrone Tracy rip off a 31-yard touchdown. I will say, though, Dwain, it's plays like that do make me wonder if, a regular human being could gain at least one rushing yard on a carry. Because my God, man, a truck could have gone through that hole. Not taking anything away from Tracy, but that's not exactly moving the needle for me. This still very much seems like Cam Scatterbu's backfield.
Yeah, so in the last two games with Tyrone Tracy back, he's averaged 24.7 fantasy points. Obviously, he had the 3 touchdown game last week, so that inflates that a little bit. But the big thing is 65% of the snaps, 56% of the rushing attempts, and 49% route participation with a 21% target share. And that's the thing with Scatterbu, Ian. You don't get the 3 touchdown performance. Well, then they turn around and they target him in the pass game. He had an 18% target share today, so gave you 18.4 PPR points. So looking really good. He had 50% of the attempts today, so that's not really coming at the expense of Tyrone Tracy, though. Guys, remember, Jackson Dart's a key component to the run game. So when you hear these numbers with the Giants, it's really a 3-way split because we do have Jackson Dart getting some of the design rushing attempts. So Tyrone Tracy today, looking at what he did, he gave you 28% of the attempts. Last week, I think it was 24%. So he's basically in the same ballpark that he was the week before. So I am with you. Maybe a slight little hair trim, for Scatterbu in his role this week with Tracy a little bit healthier, but not enough for me to be worried about. I'm with you. I think when you look at Scatterbu now at this point, you just have to feel really good about having him on your fantasy team.
And then Wan'Dale Robinson also, man, 95 yards. Avoided a lot of Patrick Surtain working out of the friendly confines of the slot. But hey, last week went for 84 yards and a touchdown against Philly. He was someone who I still managed to rank. I think it's my wide receiver 26 ahead of this week. I think with the buys, Dwayne, we could be looking at a low-end wide receiver 2 here.
Yeah, man. So in 3 games without Malik Neighbors, averaging 14.7 fantasy points per game, 96% route participation, 27% targets. The 27% targets in the routes are not surprising. But 74 air yards per game, that's what's surprising since we lost Malik Neighbors. So not like he's going down the field all the time. He has an 8.5 average depth of target over those 3 games, but it's not all attached to the line of scrimmage like we saw last year, right? Where it's those 2 and 4 ADOT games. He's really getting stuff down the field, and then he's getting the underneath stuff, but he's getting intermediate stuff as well. And there's just enough of a diet of getting stuff pushed down the field to him. And I do think this comes back to what you talked about with Dart, man. He has a feel for it, and he knows when to hit Wan'Dale and when he knows to press the seam and do those different things. So I just think that Wan'Dale's a really good fit with what Jackson Dart's doing, and he's by far the top option on this Giants team. And so if you like Jackson Start, well, then you also like Wan'Dale Robinson, man. He's playing really well, Ian. So I think Wan'Dale Robinson's for sure in that wide receiver 3 conversation the rest of the way, possibly even when we're at full strength and we don't have teams on bye. It's going to be hard to push him out of the wide receiver 3 conversation.
Again, bit of a gut punch for Giants fans. I know you guys certainly expected to win that one up 19 to 4th, but man, certainly got to feel far, far better about your future than you have in quite some time. So again, this was the Xfinity Game of the Week brought to you by Xfinity. Imagine all your football all in one place. Easy, Xfinity, imagine that. Moving on to an NFC East battle, we had the Dallas Cowboys beat down the Washington Commanders 44-22. Cowboys covered with ease as 1.5 point favorites. The overcash with ease, as it always seems to do in Cowboys games, at 55.5. half. So this was another one, Dwayne, that again was already 41-22 by the end of the third quarter. So very much had a lot of mop-up time going on in the fourth. That said, Dak Prescott did not need a fourth quarter to rack up another 3 touchdowns through the air, 264 yards. He is now second in the NFL in both of those categories, continuing to really make his name for himself, Dwayne, as a potential MVP candidate. I don't know if the Cowboys are going to be good enough for him to get that mantle, but for my money's worth, and I know I would say for your money's worth too, not easily, he's had some amazing years, obviously, but this is some of the very best ball of Dak Prescott's career.
Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, he played amazing. I think he's even playing better than that right now. 23.3 fantasy points this weekend. Threw for 8.8 yards per attempt, 264 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, Dak Prescott's playing absolutely out of his freaking mind. And now he's got CeeDee Lamb back to go with Pickens and Ferguson that really the team had to rely on those other 2 games. And so, man, you're just clicking on all cylinders. Like, what's the weakness of the Cowboys offense right now? I mean, like, you could argue it's the health of the offensive line, but that's going to improve, as we keep going. I mean, everything about this offense right now is working. Javonte Williams is working. It's all upside, like across the board.
And honestly, like Dak's ability to handle some of those offensive line woes has been awesome.
Yeah.
Him and Daniel Jones this year are the only 2 quarterbacks with a sub 10% pressure to sack rate. So even when they are getting pressure on Dak, he's doing a really good job not taking those negative plays. We've seen him take off and scramble a little bit more as well. So great stuff there. Obviously had CeeDee Lamb back in this one, 110 yards and a touchdown. That was a 74-yard score, cut back in front as 2 Commanders ran into each other. He has now cleared 100 yards in each of his full 3 games. Also got plenty from George Pickens, caught 4 of his 6 targets for 82 yards. Also set up another touchdown when he drew a 37-yard defensive pass interference on Marshawn Lattimore, who had a rough game and maybe even a rougher season, man. I think that dude in his prime was one of the best corners in the NFL. Those days are a bit gone. So league high 116 DPI yards for George Pickens. He is tied with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, and his own teammate Jake Ferguson with an NFL high 6 receiving touchdowns. Ferguson also, again, has 6 this year. Dwayne, he had 7 from 2022 to 2024 combined. Again, really seeing great things from this passing game. And the run game, Javonte Williams. I mentioned before, Jonathan Taylor has 105 more rushing yards than the next closest rusher. The next closest rusher is Javonte Williams, Dwayne. What a time to be alive. RB6 in fantasy, averaging 18.7 PPR points per game. This dude is a demon, particularly before halftime when the Cowboys just want to pick up a few yards. And he says, nah, it's okay. I'll get you to the doorstep of the end zone. He ran so hard today. He's been doing it all season. He had the one bad game against the Panthers. Otherwise, he's looked great, Dwayne. One of the best picks in fantasy by far.
Yeah, gave you 18.8 PPR points today and dominated the backfield again. So I don't have anything else to add, man. You did a good summary of the Cowboys. If you have Cowboys, you're starting them every single week. The only thing I'll add is Lamb had a 100% route participation rate. I think he wants everybody to know, yes, he's healthy.
He is healthy, only healthy running back behind Javonte Williams. That would be Jaden Blue. So if you are trying to stash a handcuff, he would be your guy, pal. Over to the Commanders. Really just a situation where we need to find out how healthy Jaden Daniels and these wide receivers are. Unfortunately, Daniels went ahead and suffered a hamstring injury. I think he racked up like 18 fantasy points before he had that unfortunate happening. So again, almost like that Packers game where he did not play well at all, and he's still Jaden Daniels, so he racked up plenty of points anyway. Threw a touchdown to Zach Ertz, who was just left uncovered because, the Cowboys defense still tends to do that for half the game. Also ran in for a touchdown. Saw Mariota go in after and throw a pick 6 dagger to Deron Bland. So really, I think, Dwayne, just again, we got to see what's happening with Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. Who was leading the wide receiver room, I guess, just quickly in case they are sidelined once again?
It was Jalen Lane at 75% routes with a 19% target share. Chris Moore was right there at 80% routes with a 16% target share. It's hard to know with McCaffrey because he got banged up. So he only had a 53% route participation today. And there was a Robbie Chosen sighting, if that does anything for you. Obviously, Zach Ertz was doing Zach Ertz things. Caught a touchdown. Didn't do much else, 12.7 fantasy points. So, we just need Deebo and we need McLaurin back. Obviously, the big thing is we need Jaden back. And it was 17.7 fantasy points already for Jaden, despite not having his weapons before the injury.
Again, hopefully all those guys can get healthy ahead of their Monday night matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead. Didn't seem like, though, Dwayne, last point here on the game, that Bill Krosky-Merritt necessarily had the big-time role we were looking for. There was a little bit more Chris Rodriguez than in past weeks when he was dealing with an injury.
Yeah, but it was still good. Like he's like in the J.K. Dobbins role is what I would say. He's getting basically half of the work. He's getting most of the rushing attempts. He's just not playing as much on pass downs. They're giving the passing downs to McNichols, and then they're letting Rodriguez spell Bill occasionally. So he only gave you 4.2 PPR points today, guys, but still had 57% of the rushing attempts. He still had 60% of the snaps inside the 5. He still had over a 50% snap share. So I wouldn't lose the faith. I think it's just one of these situations where we want to get so excited about a player, and that's kind of like what that's like the genesis of the utilization score was I wanted to be able to create these comps for players, so we just wouldn't feel like we're like getting washed around by the waves every single week and be like, okay, like if we zoom out and we look at this player over a 3 or 4 game sample, like what other historical comps look like, and we talked about it last week that the low end for Bill could still be like a 12 to 13 fantasy point per game player. Over the last 3 games, he's averaged 12.3 fantasy points. But he's been in this role. He is the lead back now for the Commanders, but he's still having these other 2 guys are getting about 50% of the work right now. So just need Jaden Daniels back, man. Like having Jaden Daniels be in a healthy version of Jaden Daniels can do so much for these players. But I saw a lot of people like when I tweeted the stuff about Bill, it was like, oh my God, Bill sucks. It's so funny how quickly we change our minds. And they're like, throw the one good game out. I'm like, guys, come on, man. Like we can't throw the one good game out. How about we look at all 3 of the games and we put them together and see how we really feel about this player, because the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. But what happens is the instant reaction culture that we live in. And like, look, we're doing a reaction show on a Sunday night, guys, after all these games. Like we get guilty of it too. We try to balance as much as we can. But the point being is like, we're so quick to want to rush and like, especially young players. Like we want to say, it's happened. It's here. Like, it's just like Travis Hunter. Like we really love him. Got a great trend going, but there's no in between. Either people want to say it's happened or, oh my God, it was just garbage time and it's never going to happen. Like the truth really is there's this range of outcomes that center around kind of like the median potential outcome. And for Bill, like what he looks like to me right now, Ian, is still a low end running back 2 that could still give you running back 1 upside. If things don't go his way, he could be more of a running back 3 like that. Yeah. And any one of those things could happen. And then we don't have to pretend that we know. Right? I mean, it's okay to know that that's the range that you're dealing with. And if you know the range, then you can decide, okay, like do I like that range or not? And would I rather flip him? Would I rather move him? Do I want to trade for him? So I think people just got to chill out, man. Like we overreact so much.
Just chill out, man. Couldn't agree more. So I get it. Look, he faced the Bears and the Cowboys. You were expecting some smash matchups there. But I think the Jaden Daniels point, and I think Terry and Debo being banged up and out of the picture, like, hey, if you're a defense, you don't have to worry about that. You look at Robbie Chosen, you're like, Robbie Chosen's on the Commanders right now. Yeah, I think you're a little bit more preoccupied now with the run game than you might otherwise be when Terry freaking McLaurin is standing out there. So again, we'll see what happens. Get healthy, Washington. I'm with you. I thought the J.K. Dobbins comp was perfect. 2 more games, everyone, but do want to remind you, if you want a free year of Fantasy Life Plus, you can actually get that. You go to fantasylife.com/comment. All you have to do is download the comment browser by Perplexity, and you will get a full year of Fantasy Life Plus for free. We will not offer a better deal for the rest of the year. We literally can't unless we decide to start paying you, which will be cool. I'll let you guys know if we do that. But yeah, right now, Fantasy Life Plus for free, fantasylife.com/comment. 2 more games, everyone. Appreciate you sticking with us here on the Fantasy Life Show. The Packers took down the Cardinals with a pretty late touchdown, 27-23. Arizona did cover as 7-point dogs. Their comeback attempt afterwards came up just a little bit short. Over did cash at 45. So with the Packers, just a pretty sloppy game, Dwayne. We've seen them kind of play down in some competition this year. Just 3 for 10 on 3rd down, 262 total yards, 10 penalties for 94 yards. Didn't even have 26 minutes time of possession. So Jordan Love, right after I said he might be a good dark horse MVP candidate, looked a lot more like the, more mediocre version of Jordan Love out there. So wasn't terrible, but, just 6.2 yards per attempt against the Cardinals.
Running around more. So for fantasy, he had 4 scrambles today for 22 yards. Like that's kind of been consistent now for a couple of weeks. So I think that's a positive for fantasy. But yeah, and I think the other challenge for the Packers, Ian, is like they can run the ball so well and they're so committed to the run. Like it just creates these challenging scenarios where they decide they don't really need to air it out. Even in a game like this, where really, the Cardinals kept this thing pretty tight, like for a lot of the game. So that's the challenge for Love, is that they are so committed to that ground game. I think that he's still playing well. To your point, yeah, was it his best day at the office? No. 6.2 yards per attempt. But the biggest challenge to Love's weekly fantasy ceiling is just like how many pass attempts he's going to get. It's like it feels like he has to do it through efficiency or his passing touchdowns, like once they get down inside the 10, which they have some really great scheme stuff down there, guys. So he's going to have some games where he throws for 3 or 4 touchdowns because of what they do in that area, and they have to respect Josh Jacobs. But it's just a team that wants to be very balanced.
Took a 4th down shot to Romeo Doubs, overthrew him by just about a yard. I even saw one of the Packers beat reporters saying maybe Doubs should have kept going upfield. And then to your point, they had Josh Jacobs pounding it in, from the goal line. So yeah, could have been a 3-touchdown day in another simulation. Unfortunately, not this one for all you Jordan Love managers. So yeah, Romeo Doubs, 72 yards on 8 targets. We saw a nice Tucker Kraft game, 10 targets, 58 yards and a score on those. Again, someone where it's not like we were moving them out of the top 5, but just good to see Tucker Kraft go out there and be a freaking beast, Dwain. So love seeing that, and Dobbs on the wide receiver 3 range. What did we see from Jacobs though in terms of his utilization? Obviously came into this one as a true game time decision, but wound up gutting it out.
Well, I want to say something about the receivers because I wanted to talk about Romeo Doubs, and you've asked me, it's not even your birthday. Could I say something nice about Romeo Doubs one time? And here's what I can say about Romeo Doubs. Like, he's averaging 13.1 fantasy points per game on the season. I know that's not like blowing you people's socks off, but like that's a really good wide receiver 3. He leads the team behind Tucker Kraft. Well, he's ahead of Tucker Kraft right now in target share at 22%. He's got 36% of the air yards. He's averaging 80.3 air yards per game. And he's got not a great yards per route run, but it's good enough, 1.82. And nobody else is really stepping up. Like, I know we're going to get Christian Watson back. I know we'll get Jaden Reed back, but those are also players we've seen, kind of hit or miss or be in part-time roles in the past. So I just wanted to say, like, Romeo Doubs, like, I think he's quietly, potentially like he could have a career year this year. I mean, he's staying on the field more than the other guys, and he's getting a few more targets than he did in the past. So there you go, Ian. I said something nice about Romeo Doubs, and it wasn't based on one game. It's based on what he's done for the season. So how about that?
And you went out of your way to do so, Dwain.
I'll talk about Josh Jacobs.
we get to Dwain. We get to like 1:30 a.m. and I'm like, I know Dwain doesn't want to talk about Romeo Doubs. We'll just
You're just on the skip thing.
You still took the time to do that. That's amazing.
Hey man, like if you know me, if the players are playing good, like, and we've got a decent sample on it, like we're going to follow the data, and Dobbs is playing good. So just Josh Jacobs real quick, a little bit less of a workload today. He still gave you 18.8 fantasy points because he punched in the 2 rushing touchdowns, wasn't as involved in the passing game. And look who it traded off to, Tucker Kraft. We just talked about that last week. And we're like, oh man, Josh Jacobs getting all these targets. Tucker Kraft was down. They sometimes operate, Kraft's a low ADOT player. So 3.6 today. But when you look at Jacobs, 68% of the rushing attempts. So he still had that. They just didn't use him the same way in the passing game in this game. So it does also look like Emmanuel Wilson continues to be the guy to have rostered behind Mr. Josh Jacobs. Now, Marshawn Lloyd could come off IR here at some point. We'll see if that kind of changes things. But Emmanuel Wilson,
right back on.
For the last, he'll go right back on it. He'll actually walk to the field and he'll pull something on the walkover. But Emmanuel Wilson, as of right now, looks like the handcuff to Josh Jacobs.
And I say that joke very lovingly. I've drafted so much Marshawn Lloyd. I could not believe more in that dude's talent. Please make me look stupid for saying that, Marshawn Lloyd. I would love to completely eat shit on that take. But Packers are facing the Steelers on Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh. Could be a fun one there. Over the Cardinals, right? Another situation where we probably just got to see how some of these injuries work out. They do have a Week 8 bye coming up. But yeah, Jacoby Brissett, man, it was just good to see a competent, real life, like sized, human being playing quarterback there. And just some of those big 3rd down throws, man, like the honey hole shot to Zay Jones, 43 yards down the sideline. He was under a lot of pressure, had a couple nice throws to Marv too. The touchdowns to Trey McBride were pretty wide open, but hey, good to see Trey McBride scoring touchdowns. Like, it's not as extreme. It's like a upper middle class man's version of what the Jets are dealing with. Okay. I'm not trying to say that Kyler is Justin Fields. He's obviously proven more than Justin Fields, a lot more than Justin Fields and everything, but Jacoby's playing some really good ball in his own right. I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, man, look, in 2 games, for Brissett, let's just look at what the 2 quarterbacks are doing. It's a small sample for Brissett, but if we're looking at the per game numbers here, Kyler, 192 passing yards per game. Gross. That's just sick. 300 for Jacoby Brissett. He's thrown for 381 and then he threw for not 381, 281 and 320. So, I mean, he's averaging 300 yards per game. He's averaging 2 passing touchdowns per game. Kyler, not even at 1. 0.9. Passing yards per attempt, 7.5 for Jacoby Brissett, 5.9 for Kyler. Kyler, 0.6 picks per game, 0.5 for Brissett. So, man, I just want to see Jacoby Brissett. Like, it's not like Kyler was doing enough to make him worth anything to us really anyway in fantasy, like just kind of like a borderline QB1. And we know Kyler can have these blow up game guys. He could run for 60 yards and 2 touchdowns and throw for 300. It could happen any game. But as far as the rest of the weapons go, like Brissett is just better, for at least for right now. Maybe he cools off and this goes away. But I mean, I hope the Cardinals coming out of the bye just ride the hot hand here with Brissett, Ian. I know they're 2-5, so I don't know what the incentive will be necessarily, but he's definitely been better for McBride. And I think he'll end up being better for Marvin Harrison. It didn't happen today, but I'll be honest, I like Marvin Harrison better when I hear Jacoby Brissett would be starting.
Jonathan Gannon did confirm Kyler is the team starting quarterback when healthy. We'll see exactly how healthy he is if Jonathan Gannon's seat starts heating up, though. So I'm with you on Marv. I do think at this point, give me Jacoby. He did actually draw a 21-yard DPI, so they could have been a little bit bigger. Only George Pickens actually has more DPI yards than Marv this year when you are trying to looking at for some of those hidden opportunities. But yeah, man, again, this is Kyler's worst season of his career passing by pretty much any metric. He hasn't always been this bad, but you know what? He's playing this bad right now, and it's not like he's averaging the 50 rushing yards per game that we hear every single offseason about him allegedly wanting to get back up to. So we'll see what happens. Otherwise, man, run game seemed like Bam Knight, Michael Carter, pretty much the same thing we saw last week.
Yeah, 58% of the attempts to Bam Knight. We had 48%. No, sorry, not 48%. It was like 30 something percent. I got there it is. 29% of the attempts went to Carter. So Bam Knight, clearly the early down guy. Their snaps were a little closer, 47% for Knight, 36% for Carter. Carter's been terrible, man. 1.6 yards per carry in this one. He's really on the struggle bus when it comes to his efficiency on the ground. He did see they tied in route participation at 33%. So the main thing Carter did was he played the 2-minute offense, but Dearness Johnson came in and played for Amari DiMercato and was the third man in the mix. And got to get him 17%. I say that joking. Dearness Johnson, like a couple years ago, man, like had some nice efficiency stuff going. I know it was on a small sample, but it's kind of like, maybe there's something there. So yeah, it's a 3-way backfield. None of these guys are even getting half of like the overall opportunities on an offense that we're not super crazy about. So it's kind of like, let's get Trey Benson back. That's really the only thing I can say. Let's get Trey Benson back and just let that dude have like 70% of the work.
Hey, that's AAF champion Dearness Johnson to you, Dwain. Shout out to the Orlando Apollos. But I just don't understand how the Chargers and the Cardinals can have their top 2 RBs that they obviously had huge plans for in the center of the offense around both get injured and just say, whatever. RB3, RB4 practice squad. It's not working, clearly, at this point. Kamani had a good game against the Dolphins and everything, but neither Bam, neither Michael Carter look good.
It's like, what else is out there and what do you have to trade to get it when you know you're going to get your young running back, to return later in the season? I think that's the challenge. If you got to make a trade for a player, like you got to take on a contract, like there's probably nothing just sitting on, is there a free agent you can think of right now that you're like, man, this guy needs to be in work? I mean, there probably is someone if we really sat here and racked our brains, like an older veteran or something, but I think it's just tough, man, when you lose 2 of your backs. Like you don't, what's the Colts? The Colts old coach, they said they don't practice, Peyton Manning being hurt. I mean, you lose 2 running backs. It's kind of a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, the first 2 running backs that stuck out into my head were Dalvin Cook and Gus Edwards. So I don't think we have
it would be much more, but maybe.
Yeah. I was hoping that Antonio Gibson was going to find his way onto one of these teams before he got hurt, but honestly, that was probably a pipe dream because the Patriots probably wouldn't have been wanting to let him go in the first place. So it is what it is. Get healthier, Arizona. We would all appreciate it. Guys, time for our last game. First, though, it is our DraftKings closing lines. I teamed up with DraftKings Sportsbook to bring you the ultimate way to tip off this NBA season. Right now, new customers who bet just $5 will get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. That's right, new customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins, plus 3 months of NBA League Pass on us. All you have to do is download DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using the promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Stack your bonus bets on same-game parlays, player props, money line spreads, and more, or stay in on the action with live betting that brings every play to life. So here's your play. Download DraftKings Sportsbook, sign up for promo code FANTASYLIFE, bet just $5 and get 3 months of League Pass on us and $300 if your bet wins, paid in bonus bets. Thanks to DraftKings Sportsbook for sponsoring this. Let's make this NBA season one to remember. In a, I think we could say lackluster edition of Sunday Night Football. All football is good football, obviously, but the San Francisco 49ers took down the Atlanta Falcons 20-10. Kudos to the underdog 49ers for winning outright. They were 1.5-point dogs. The over did not cash. This was at 46.5. Very much went under here. So probably the last game for Mac Jones, Dwain. Didn't put up his usual 300 yards. Brock Purdy was seeing a lot of him on the sidelines. Seems like he is starting to progress through. Obviously was a tough matchup, though, against the Atlanta Falcons. In terms of receiving, it really just was the Christian McCaffrey show. No one else even had over 31 yards. Jawan Jennings was the next man up. Anything notable from the wide receivers? Again, I guess my concern going in would have been that Jawan Jennings would have been limited given that he's playing through 25 broken ribs and he had to amputate his ankle or whatever was going on there. But it did seem like he was actually the next wide receiver up. They were just kind of force-feeding Christian McCaffrey at this point.
Yeah, he had high, low, and mid ankle sprains, and every rib in his body was broken. But he had a 93% route participation tonight with a 29% target share. Only gave you 7.1 PPR points, but he did outwork Kendrick Bourne, who had an 82% route participation with an 8% target share. Guys, George Kittle was, in fact, on the field. He had an 86% route participation tonight, but only an 8% target share and a whopping 0 fantasy points. So that's enough to bench Mac Jones. Okay. Mac Jones, come on, George Kittle. Did anyone tell you that you're playing with George Kittle, bro? What are we doing here? So we know better days are ahead for George Kittle. The playing time was there. So that's a positive.
National Tight End Week is Week 8. Obviously, that will be the dream bounce back spots for Kittle. But look, man, all jokes aside, this does happen occasionally with Kittle. Now, usually it happens when you got Debo and Ayuk going nuts. So it's okay, what's the big deal here? But how do you go a full game? And Kittle should be one of the easiest guys to just get the ball to 4 times per game. And if he happens to only get 10 yards, whatever. But I know he's an incredible blocker. They were still setting him out on plenty of routes, Dwayne. You just said it. It was like that Malik Neighbors game against the Chiefs. There are certain players, I get it. Defenses can take him away. The whole Belichick, take away your best player thing. He's the only guy to ever think about that in the history of football. Just someone like George Kittle screens, play, and Shanahan's going to forget more than I ever know. This happens all the time. Not all the time, but it happens so much for arguably the single best tight end in football. Continues to amaze me. But yeah, Christian McCaffrey, absolutely balling out. Don't forget about Brian Robinson as an A+ tier handcuff. Unfortunately, clock seemed to hit midnight on Kendrick Bourne's Cinderella story. Right when I bought in, Dwayne, which he told me would happen. So kudos to you. Over with the Falcons, man, what is this team? They beat the Bills. And they look good doing it. They had a nice win versus the Commanders before that. Also, they have the worst loss of the season, I would say, losing 30-0 to the Panthers. And then, bro, Nick Bosa's out, Fred Warner's out. You can't rip off a run of 10 yards with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Michael Penix is just back and forth every single week. No signs of consistency. Kyle Pitts looked great. That's pretty much all we had.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Pitts and Drake London both had 10 targets. So 28% target shares for both guys. Kyle Pitts gave you 13.2 PPR points. Drake London only 8.2, only hauling in 4 of those 10 targets that he had today. So, but, still going to be fine. This, you get the ups and downs. But to your point, we've had the ups and downs really come, with Penix. He'll make a great throw one play, and then the next play, you miss a wide open Darnell Mooney, just running kind of the cell route on the sideline. And you're whoa, how do we miss? That's a huge play that potentially helps you go win the game. And so Penix, I think overall for where we're at, in year 2, for all intents and purposes, this is his rookie season. You're going to get some ups and downs. I think still overall, I feel pretty good about where Penix is, but to your point, it's very hard to pin down what it's going to look like on a week-to-week basis. Darnell Mooney did play 86% of the routes, so that was good to see him back in action. He had a 14% target share. He came up with a few pretty good catches of his own. And that is really it. You guys all know Bijan Robinson's really good at football, or do I need to say anything? No, Bijan Robinson's really good at freaking football.
His
21.2
receiving,
PPR points.
I will say, Dwayne, like I didn't see this level of receiving going this year in terms of
Another
receiving
level.
yards. Yeah, and they were talking about
Because he trained with CMC.
Yeah, like that's crazy. We're seeing it, man. CMC, 516 receiving yards. Bijan has 390. Achan's in third at 211. Like Achan was the guy that I thought we were pegging as next up. It's Bijan.
The books because the way the books work, and this is how I go into looking for these lines on these props, is I've read a lot about how the books create their lines. Like I read a couple of books on it. And so I started thinking through like, okay, well, what are the things that potentially the books are doing that like maybe would be an edge, like for us, maybe not long-term, but like something we might be able to bet for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row as the books finally catch up. And dude, CMC and Bijan Robinson, like basically playing Marshall Faulk roles, and like they're not catching up. Like I bet both of them today. They were part of the bets that I put out there, but McCaffrey's line was at 45. He's averaging like 70 yards per game receiving on the season, and he's like over that number almost every week. And then the same thing for Bijan, like his line was 37.5. And you look at it and you're like, man, that's a lot for a running back. But when you go look at what they're doing and the way they're getting used every single week and what they're averaging per game. Now, I'm not saying CMC is going to average 70 receiving yards all year, but I'm saying when you can get the line at 45, I'm like, it's just not catching up fast enough. So yeah, both of these guys playing absolutely out of their mind in the receiving game. And it's just not the dump off stuff, Ian. They both work down the field. They both add a lot after the catch. They both uncover late in plays when their quarterback needs them. Like they really are receivers. They're extensions of the receiving game, not just check down guys.
I do wonder if there's something to they're giving Bijan a lot of the Ray McLeod stuff because he's been out for a little bit. Snaps in the slot
has just been buried. Like even when he's healthy, they're just not playing him anymore. And they're
like looking at Bijan because it's stuck out to me how much they're actually using him in the slot and not wide. His snaps in the slot are out wide. Week 1 were 5, then 9, then 4. These last 3 games though, 13, 21, and 19. Dwayne, that you never see that at running backs out here. So
he only lined up in the backfield 68% of the time today. I mean, they're moving him all over. He was lining up 17% from the slot, but he was lining up wide today. Yeah.
Wow. It's a real thing. I'm going to start him, Dwayne, next week against the Dolphins.
Yeah, make sure you get him in your fantasy lineup. You benched him this week? Man, you must have an awesome team, Ian.
I pulled a rap sheet. I accidentally started Bijan Robinson this week.
Come on, rap sheet. That? We love you, but goodness, like
love your rap sheet. Niners are at the Texans. Falcons at home against the Dolphins. Tyler Algier might be breaking our top 24 for that one. We shall see. But guys, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Dwayne's got his utilization goodness ready to go in the morning. Also, the world famous utilization report in the evening. I'll have my ranks out there around the same time as well. Make sure you check them out. If you like the show, then please like the show. We always appreciate that. Hitting that subscribe button helps as well. So for Dwayne, for producer Mick, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.